Chapter 1. 12 hairpins. I counted them as Helena wove them into my hair, each one sliding into place with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had been dressing me since I was a child. 12 slender instruments of silver and pearl, arranged in an elaborate coronet that would have made any lady of the court green with envy. 14, if one counted the decorative ones Helena insisted upon for the sake of appearance. I had asked her to teach me how to use them as weapons when I was 17, 3 years after. Well, after. She had not questioned the request, merely taken me to the empty practice room and shown me precisely where to strike, how much force to apply, which angles would prove most effective should I ever find myself in desperate need. The jugular, she had explained with perfect calm, was not so very difficult to locate. I wondered now if one might dispatch Prince Dorian with such an implement. His neck seemed perpetually exposed by his habit of looking down his nose at everyone he deemed beneath him, which was to say, everyone. Surely it would not require exceptional skill. A firm grip, a quick thrust, and... "You are scowling, child." Helena's voice broke through my rather violent reverie. "It shall give you wrinkles." "I am contemplating murder," I replied, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "I believe that warrants a scowl." Murder is such an inelegant solution. She adjusted a curl near my temple with gentle fingers, though I cannot say I disapprove of the impulse, given the circumstances. Despite everything, I felt my mouth curve into something approximating a smile. This was our way, dark humor shared in whispers, truth spoken only when we were alone. Helena had been my lady's maid and governess for 16 years, and she knew me better than anyone alive, better than my father, who barely looked at me, better than Cordelia, my dearest friend, who loved me but did not know my deepest secrets, better, perhaps, than I knew myself. I suppose murdering one's betrothed on the night of the engagement ball would be considered poor form, I conceded, even by my admittedly lax standards of etiquette. Quite poor form indeed. Helena's hands stilled on my shoulders, and our eyes met in the mirror once more. When she spoke again, her voice was soft, almost sad. "You are quiet this evening, more so than usual." "I am contemplating my imminent engagement to a man whose previous 2 wives met untimely ends. It does not inspire cheerful conversation." "Your father..." "My father cares nothing for my well-being." The words came out more sharply than I intended, and I took a breath, forcing my voice back to its usual sardonic calm. "We are both well aware of this truth, Helena. There is no need to pretend otherwise. Not here, not between us." Her hand squeezed my shoulder gently, a gesture of comfort, of understanding, of all the things she could not say aloud. Helena was a servant, for all that she had been more mother to me than my own had ever been. There were proprieties to maintain, even in private. Especially in private, where ears might listen at keyholes and tongues might wag to those who would pay for information. "I wish I could give you a different life," she said quietly. "You have given me everything you could," I thought but did not say. "You have been the only mother I have ever known. You have taught me to survive, to fight, to endure. It is not your fault that survival sometimes feels like a punishment in itself." But such sentiments were too raw, too honest for speech. So instead, I reached up and covered her hand with mine, squeezing once. She understood. She always understood. A knock at the door broke the moment. Helena stepped back, resuming her professional demeanor as smoothly as drawing a curtain. "Enter," I called. No one entered. Instead, a folded piece of paper slid beneath the door, the heavy cream stationery I recognized immediately. Helena retrieved it, glanced at the blank exterior, and handed it to me with a knowing look. I unfolded it carefully, though my hands wanted to shake. "Dearest Sera, if you require an exit this evening, I shall ensure Mother develops a sudden need for my escort to the conservatory precisely at 9 o'clock. The East Terrace will be clear for a quarter hour. I have taken the liberty of ensuring the guards at that post will be distracted. Do be careful, whatever you decide, and do try not to murder anyone, no matter how richly they deserve it. I should hate to lose my only sister to the executioner's block. Your devoted brother." I read it twice, then held it to the candle flame, watching the paper curl and blacken and fall to ash in the wash basin. Adrian had taught me this precaution years ago, nothing in writing that could be used against us. Nothing that could prove our bond, our alliance against the forces that sought to keep us apart. My half-brother. We shared a father and nothing more. His mother was Queen Vivienne, the woman my father had married 3 years after my own mother's death. A death I knew nothing about, save that it had occurred when I was too young to remember, and that my father refused to speak of it. Ever. Adrian was Vivienne's son, her precious boy, her claim to power and position. By all rights, he should have been a stranger to me, an enemy, even, competing for our father's favor and the kingdom's future. Instead, he was the only person in this palace I trusted absolutely. Adrian, Helena asked, though she already knew the answer. He offers me an escape route, 9 o'clock East Terrace. I met her eyes in the mirror. He is too good for this place, for this family. He is his own person, despite his parentage, as are you. She resumed her work on my hair, her movements deft and sure. The question is whether you intend to use his escape route. I do not know yet. I suppose it depends on how unbearable the evening becomes. Your threshold for unbearable is remarkably high, child. It concerns me. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. I have had considerable practice. We fell into silence as Helena finished my hair. I watched my reflection take shape in the mirror. An elegant stranger in ivory silk and pearls, dark red hair piled high in an elaborate style that must have taken an hour to create, green eyes that looked too large in a face gone pale with dread. I looked like a princess, refined, demure, utterly false. This was the art I had perfected these 6 years, appearing docile while harboring rebellion in every breath, smiling while my mind catalogued escape routes, agreeing while planning defiance. I was an actress upon a stage, performing a role I despised, and the curtain never fell. But the alternative was to be crushed entirely, and I was not yet ready to surrender. There, Helena stepped back, surveying her work with a critical eye. You look beautiful. I look like a lamb being led to slaughter. A very well-dressed lamb. Despite everything, I smiled. Your comfort is overwhelming. She moved to the wardrobe, retrieving my gloves and the delicate fan I was meant to carry. As she handed them to me, she leaned close, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. The hairpins, Sera, if you need them. I remember the lessons. I met her eyes, saw the worry there, the love. The jugular is not so very difficult to locate. I am serious, child. So am I stood, smoothing my skirts with hands that wanted to tremble. I survived this long, did I not? I shall survive one more ball. One more performance, I thought. One more night of pretending I am not screaming inside. Helena helped me into my gloves, white silk that buttoned at the wrist, each tiny pearl button a small eternity to fasten. The fan was ivory and lace, a delicate thing that matched my gown. I was armored in beauty, in propriety, in all the trappings of my station. I had never felt more vulnerable in my life. Helena, I said suddenly as she reached for the door, thank you for everything. She paused, her hand on the brass handle, and for a moment, her carefully maintained composure cracked. I saw the woman beneath the servant, the mother beneath the maid. Come back to me tonight, she said softly. However you manage it, whatever you must do, come back. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Then she opened the door, and I stepped out into the corridor, and the performance began. The palace was ablaze with light. Every candelabra, every chandelier, every sconce burned with dozens of candles, turning the grand hallway into something out of a fairy tale. Garlands of hothouse flowers draped the banisters, roses and lilies and exotic blooms I could not name, their perfume so heavy it made my head ache. Servants moved like shadows in their dark livery, carrying trays of champagne and delicacies to the ballroom where Valmoria's finest would gather to celebrate my engagement. My sale, more accurately, my transfer of ownership from one man to another. I walked slowly, each step measured, my face composed in an expression of serene anticipation that felt like a mask carved from ice. I passed courtiers who bowed and curtsied, ladies who smiled with jealousy in their eyes, gentlemen who assessed me with the same cool appraisal one might give a horse at auction. Good bloodlines, decent temperament if somewhat spirited, should breed well enough. The thought made my stomach turn. Seraphina. I turned to find Cordelia hurrying toward me, a vision in pale blue silk that made her honey-colored hair seem to glow in the candlelight. My friend, my confidant, the sister I had chosen if not the one I had been born with. Delia, I embraced her, feeling some of the tension ease from my shoulders at her familiar warmth. You look lovely. I look acceptable. You look like a princess from a storybook. She pulled back, holding me at arm's length, her brown eyes searching my face with concern. How are you managing? I am breathing. I believe that counts as managing. Sira. Please. I touched her arm gently. Not now. If I think too deeply about what this evening represents, I shall lose my composure entirely, and that would be unseemly. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well, but I am here should you need me, for anything. If only you knew what I might need, I thought. If only I could tell you. But I could not. Some truths were too dangerous for sharing. Some secrets were poison, and I would not risk infecting her with my knowledge. So instead, I smiled and linked my arm through hers, and together we walked toward the ballroom. The doors stood open, revealing a scene of almost painful beauty. The ballroom was the palace's crown jewel, a vast space with soaring ceilings painted with frescoes of clouds and angels, walls lined with gilt mirrors that reflected candlelight into infinity, floors of polished marble that gleamed like still water. Musicians occupied the gallery at the far end, their instruments creating a gentle melody that floated through the air like silk. And everywhere people. The cream of Valmoria's nobility, dressed in their finest, glittering with jewels and ambition and carefully concealed malice. Oh dear, Cordelia murmured. Lady Pemberton appears to have defeated a peacock in single combat and worn its corpse as a trophy upon her head. I followed her gaze to where the aforementioned lady stood, her hair indeed adorned with what must have been every feather that unfortunate bird had possessed. Despite everything, I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat. Cordelia, you are terrible. I am honest. There is a difference. She squeezed my arm. Come, let us find the champagne before you are required to make pleasant conversation with people who are merely here to assess the merchandise. We moved through the crowd, Cordelia keeping up a steady stream of wry observations that kept me from dwelling on the fact that every eye in the room was tracking my progress. I smiled. I nodded. I exchanged pleasantries with people whose names I barely remembered and whose opinions I cared for even less. This was the other art I had mastered, appearing present while being utterly absent. My body moved through the motions, my mouth formed the appropriate words, but my mind was elsewhere. Cataloging exits, noting the positions of guards, calculating how quickly I could remove 14 hairpins if necessary. You are thinking violent thoughts again, Cordelia observed. You have that look. What look? The one that suggests you are contemplating creative applications of silverware. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing servant. I have no idea what you mean. Of course not. You are the picture of demure, oh, perdition. I followed her gaze to the ballroom's entrance and felt my heart sink. Prince Dorian Blackthorn had arrived. He stood framed in the doorway like a portrait come to life, tall and golden-haired, with the kind of classical features that poets wrote odes to. His clothing was impeccable, his bearing regal, his smile charming as he surveyed the room. He looked like a fairy tale prince. I knew better. I had made inquiries, discreet ones, through channels even Adrian knew nothing about. I had learned about the first wife, barely 17 when she wed him, dead within a year from a fall down a staircase. I had learned about the second wife, who lasted 18 months before succumbing to a mysterious illness that no physician could identify or cure. I had learned about the serving girls who disappeared from his estate. The rumors, quickly silenced, of screams in the night. The whispers that his tastes ran to cruelty, that he preferred his women frightened and his entertainments dark. And my father, knowing all of this, had sold me to him anyway. "You do not have to do this," Cordelia whispered urgently. "We could leave, right now. I have some money saved and we could." "And go where, Delia? He is a prince. My father is a king. There is nowhere in Valmoria we could hide." I drained my champagne in a most unladylike gulp, but I appreciate the offer more than you know. Dorian's eyes found mine across the crowded room. He smiled, a slow, possessive expression that made my skin crawl, and began moving in our direction. "I believe I need another drink," I murmured. "Several, in fact." "I shall fetch an entire bottle," Cordelia said grimly. But there was no time. Dorian was already upon us, bowing with practiced grace, his blue eyes fixed on me with an intensity that felt like being examined under glass. "Lady Seraphina, you are even lovelier than your portrait suggested." His voice was cultured, smooth, utterly devoid of warmth despite the compliment. "I find myself well pleased with the arrangement your father and I have made." Arrangement, as though I were a contract to be negotiated rather than a person with thoughts and will of my own. I curtsied, the movement automatic. "You are too kind, Your Highness." "Not at all, I am merely honest." He took my hand, I had not offered it, and raised it to his lips. The kiss lingered a moment too long, and I felt Cordelia stiffen beside me. "I believe we shall suit one another admirably. You possess spirit, I can see it in your eyes, despite your demure manner. I appreciate spirit in a woman." Something in his tone, in the way his thumb stroked across my knuckles, made my stomach clench. "It makes the breaking so much more satisfying." The words were soft, barely audible beneath the music and conversation. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Then his eyes met mine, and I saw the truth there, the anticipation, the hunger. He had said exactly what I thought he had said. "I am certain I do not take your meaning, my lord." My voice remained steady through sheer force of will. "Oh, I think you do." His smile widened. "But we need not discuss such matters here. There will be time enough for lessons once we are wed. I find that privacy allows for more thorough instruction." Beside me, Cordelia made a small, choked sound. Dorian's eyes flickered to her, dismissive. "Lady Ashmore, how pleasant to see you." His tone suggested it was anything but, "I wonder if you might excuse us. I believe the next dance is mine, and I should like to become better acquainted with my future bride." It was not a request. Cordelia looked at me, her eyes wide with concern and barely suppressed fury. I gave her the smallest nod. What else could I do? To refuse would be an insult, and insulting Dorian would bring consequences I was not prepared to face. "Not yet." "Of course, Your Highness." Cordelia curtsied stiffly. Her hand squeezed mine once hard before she released it. "Sira, I shall await you near the terrace when you have finished dancing." 9 o'clock, I thought. Adrian said 9 o'clock. Hold on until then. Dorian offered me his arm, and I placed my hand upon it and allowed him to lead me toward the dance floor. He was an excellent dancer. This, somehow, made everything worse. If he had been clumsy, if he had stumbled or stepped on my feet, it would have given me something to focus on beyond the cold dread pooling in my stomach. But his movements were flawless, his lead confident, his timing impeccable. And his hand on my waist was possessive, fingers pressing hard enough to bruise through silk and corset. "You dance beautifully, Seraphina." We turned, spinning through the other couples like leaves on a current. "Tell me, what other accomplishments do you possess?" "I read, I sketch occasionally. I have some small skill with languages." "How charming, all appropriately feminine pursuits." His hand tightened fractionally. "Do you ride?" "I have not had occasion to, in recent years." "A pity, I enjoy riding. the thrill of controlling something powerful, of bending it to your will through superior strength and determination. His eyes never left mine. We shall have to remedy your lack of experience. I find that regular riding improves a woman's flexibility. Heat flooded my cheeks, part embarrassment, part fury. He was being deliberately crude, testing me, seeing how much he could make me endure. You are too kind, my lord, I managed. I am many things, Seraphina. Kind is not among them. We turned again, and I realized with growing horror that he was maneuvering us away from the center of the dance floor, toward the edges where the candlelight grew dim. But I believe in honesty between husband and wife, so let me be perfectly clear about what our marriage will entail. His hand slid lower on my back, settling in a position that was absolutely inappropriate for a public dance. I tried to step back, his other hand locked around mine, crushing my fingers together. Do not pull away from me, he said softly, pleasantly, as though we were discussing the weather. You are mine now, Seraphina, bought and paid for by your father's agreement to this alliance. Best you accustom yourself to my touch. Sir, you are causing me discomfort. Am I? How unfortunate. We had reached the terrace doors now, still dancing, though we were far from the other couples. Yet you shall have to grow accustomed to far more than mere discomfort, my dear. I am not a gentle man. My previous wives learned this truth. Previous wives, both dead, and here I am about to become the third. Eventually, they learned, he continued, his voice a purr that made my skin crawl. Some took longer than others. Margaret, the first, was quite stubborn, nearly 6 months before she understood her place. Catherine was quicker, merely 2 months. His smile was terrible. I wonder which you shall be. The music swelled around us, beautiful and bright, utterly at odds with the nightmare unfolding in his words. I have been thinking on our future together, he said. I believe you shall suit me admirably once certain adjustments are made. Adjustments, my lord. Your spirit, charming in a young girl but in a wife. He spun me through the terrace doors into the shadows beyond, where the music faded and the candlelight barely reached. I prefer obedience. Fortunately, I have methods of instilling such. Quite effective methods, refined over 2 marriages. We had stopped dancing, but he had not released me. If anything, his grip had tightened, one hand still crushing mine, the other splayed across my lower back, holding me against him. When we are wed, he continued, his breath hot against my ear, I shall take you to my estate, to the East Tower, my mother's rooms. She has been dead these 10 years and they stand empty. I have had them, refurbished, for privacy. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but his body blocked any escape, and we were in shadows now, hidden from the ballroom sight. No servants are permitted on that floor, he whispered. It will be just you and I, Seraphina, and I shall teach you such lessons, how to kneel properly, how to speak only when spoken to, how to accept correction with grace. His hand slid upward, fingers grazing the underside of my breast through my gown's fabric. How to please a husband in all the ways that matter. Something broke inside me then, not the breaking he intended, but something else. Some final restraint that had been holding me back. 6 years ago, I had watched a man die and done nothing. 6 years of guilt, 6 years of nightmares, 6 years of telling myself I was helpless, powerless, a victim of circumstances beyond my control. I was not helpless now. Helena's training rose up in my mind, clear as a bell. The knee, child, drive upward with all your strength, a man's greatest weakness and his greatest source of pride. There now, Dorian murmured, his other hand moving to cup my face, turning it toward his. You see, not so terrible, though I do prefer my women responsive rather than frozen like frightened rabbits. We shall work on that. I have found that sufficient encouragement can cure even the most stubborn reluctance. His mouth descended toward mine. I drove my knee upward with every ounce of strength I possessed. The satisfying impact, his shocked gasp, the way his hands flew to his groin as he doubled over, and suddenly I was free, stumbling backward, my hands shaking with adrenaline and terror and fierce, savage satisfaction. He could not seem to finish the sentence, too occupied with trying to breathe through the pain. You stupid bitch. I did not wait to hear more. I ran. Behind me, his voice rose, raw with pain and fury. You will regret that. Do you hear me, you worthless whore? You will regret it beyond measure. Once you are mine, and you will be mine, there is no escape from this. I shall make you pay for that insult 1,000 times over. You will beg for death before I am through with you. His words chased me through the terrace, into the garden, but I was already gone. My dancing slippers kicked off because Helena had taught me that too, better barefoot than hobbled when running for your life. The palace was a labyrinth, but I knew every corridor, every hidden passage, every servant stair. I flew through them like a ghost, my ivory gown trailing behind me, my carefully arranged hair coming loose in auburn streams. Servants pressed themselves against walls as I passed. I did not care, could not care, must only run. Where can I go? He will tell father. Father will punish me. Or worse, father will give me to him immediately, will hasten the wedding, will. My breath came too fast, too shallow. The world began to narrow, darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision. I knew this feeling, had learned to recognize the signs. Panic attack, not now, please not now. But my body did not listen to such pleas. It never did. I stumbled, caught myself against a wall, tried to focus. Helena's voice in my memory, count your breaths, child, in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. The panic cannot harm you, it is merely sensation, it will pass. In for 4, my corset was too tight, I could not breathe properly. Hold for 4, my vision swam. Out for 4, the marble floor tilted beneath my feet. Again and again, and slowly, so slowly, the world began to expand once more. When I could think clearly enough to move, I found my feet had carried me here, to this place, without conscious thought. My sanctuary. The forgotten garden was my secret, known only to me and perhaps the groundskeeper who had long since given up trying to tame this corner of the palace grounds. It lay at the eastern edge of the formal gardens, where manicured lawns gave way to half-wild growth, where no one ever ventured because there was nothing of beauty or value to see. Except there was, if one looked properly. A stone bench beneath a willow tree, its branches creating a curtain of green that swayed in the evening breeze. Wild roses climbing the old garden wall, their blooms white as bone in the moonlight. The scent of night-blooming jasmine, sweet and melancholic. I collapsed onto the bench, my bare feet aching, my hands still shaking with residual terror and adrenaline. What have I done? What have I done? Dorian would not forgive this insult. He would demand retribution, and my father would give it to him. Perhaps the wedding would be moved up. Perhaps I would find myself wed and locked in that tower by week's end. Or perhaps father would punish me himself first, to teach me obedience before handing me over. The panic tried to rise again. I forced it down, breathing deliberately, focusing on the physical, the cool stone beneath me, the night air on my flushed skin, the scent of jasmine and roses. I cannot go back, not to the ball, not to that life, not to him. But where else could I go? I had no money of my own, no allies beyond the palace walls. Adrian would help if he could, but he was barely 18, with no power save what his mother allowed him. Cordelia's family would not shelter me against the king's wishes. I was trapped, as completely as I had ever been. The thought should have brought despair. Instead, it brought a strange, wild clarity. If I was trapped regardless, what did I have to lose? I was so focused on this thought, on the reckless plans beginning to form in my mind, that I nearly missed the voices. Big bastard, this one. Took 10 of us to bring him down. I froze, every muscle locking. The voices were close, just beyond the hedge that bordered this forgotten corner. Male voices, rough, laughing. Guards. Werewolf, the second voice was younger, uncertain. Lycan, the captain called it. Some distinction, apparently, though damned if I know what it is. Doesn't matter, They bleed all the same when you stick them with silver. The world stopped. No, oh God, no, not again. My hands clenched in my ruined skirts, and I had to bite down on my lip to keep from making a sound. I should leave, should flee before they discovered me, but my body would not obey, frozen in place as surely as if I had been turned to stone. Where'd they find this one? Hunting in the western woods, apparently. Damn fool thing to do, this close to the palace. Captain says he was wounded already, silver bullet through the shoulder. Half dead when they brought him in. Will he live long enough for the hunt? Oh aye, His Majesty wants him alive for the games. Nothing so entertaining as watching them fight when they know they're going to die anyway. The guard laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Sport, the king calls it. Seems cruel. Cruel, they're monsters, boy, abominations, things that shouldn't exist. You're too soft, that'll get you killed in this work. I just meant. I know what you meant, and maybe there's something almost, I don't know, magnificent about them when they change. Saw one shift once before it died. Beautiful in a terrible sort of way, all that power. A pause. Still killed it, though. Orders are orders. Their voices were fading now, moving toward the palace proper. I remained frozen, listening until I could no longer hear their footsteps. Then, moving like a woman in a dream, I stood. My feet carried me forward without conscious thought, through the wild roses that caught at my gown, around the hedge, to the small door nearly hidden by ivy. The dungeon entrance. I had not come here in 6 years, had sworn I never would again. My hand trembled as I reached for the iron handle, rusted and cold beneath my palm. Another werewolf, lycan, whatever the distinction might be, chained in my father's dungeons. Another creature facing torture and death for my father's entertainment. For 6 years, I had carried the weight of one failure, the guilt of watching a man die while I did nothing. I could do nothing then. I was 15, unarmed, ignorant of everything except that my father was a monster, and I was helpless to stop him. I was not helpless now. The door was locked, but I knew where the key was hidden. The groundskeeper kept it behind a loose stone in the wall, probably forgotten it was even there. My fingers found it, slick with rust and cobwebs. The lock turned with a shriek of protesting metal. The door swung open onto darkness, and the smell of damp stone and old blood. I should turn back, this was madness. I would be caught and punished, and it would change nothing. But I had spent 6 years drowning in guilt, in nightmares, in the memory of amber eyes finding mine in the darkness. No more, never again. I stepped through the door and descended into the dark. The stairs were narrow, worn smooth by centuries of feet. I moved carefully, one hand on the rough stone wall for balance, my bare feet silent on the steps. Torches burned in sconces along the corridor at the bottom, providing dim, flickering light. The smell was worse here, old blood and human waste and something else, something animal and wild that made the hair on the back of my neck rise. The dungeons were not large. 6 cells, all told, arranged along a single corridor. Most stood empty, their doors hanging open to reveal nothing but darkness and the remnants of old straw. 2 were occupied. I recognized the men in the first 2 cells, thieves from the village, taken a week ago. They would hang at dawn. They watched me pass with dull, hopeless eyes, too defeated to even call out. I moved past them, toward the cell at the corridor's end. Toward the darkness that seemed somehow deeper there, more absolute. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat, in my temples, in my fingertips. Every instinct screamed at me to flee. This was foolish. This was dangerous. This was. I reached the last cell and looked inside. And stopped breathing. He was chained to the wall. Silver manacles circled his wrists, suspended above his head, forcing him to his knees. Even in this position, I could see he was tall. When he stood, he would tower over me. Broad-shouldered, lean with muscle and the gauntness of hunger and pain. He wore only trousers, and his torso was a map of violence. The fresh wound from the silver bullet, stitched closed but inflamed and weeping. Older scars, dozens of them, speaking of a life lived on the edge of death. The burns at his wrists where the silver manacles ate into flesh. Dark hair fell forward, obscuring his face. But then he moved. His head lifted slowly, and I saw his face properly for the first time. Sharp features, harsh with pain and anger. A jaw that might have been handsome if not clenched so tightly. A mouth set in a grim line. And eyes. Oh God, his eyes. Amber, like autumn leaves, like honey, like sunlight through whiskey. Like the wolf from my nightmares. Not the same eyes, that wolf was dead, had died 6 years ago in my father's courtyard. But the same color. The same inhuman quality, as though something ancient and wild looked out through a human face. Those eyes fixed on me, and I could not move, could not breathe, could not think. We stared at one another, across the space of the cell. He could not possibly see me. I stood in shadow, beyond the reach of the torchlight. It was fully dark in the corridor where I stood. Yet his eyes tracked me, as surely as if I stood in full sun. You, I whispered, so quietly I barely heard it myself. But he heard. I saw his eyes narrow, his body tense despite the chains. You, I said again, and my voice broke. You are like him. Like the one who died, like the one I could not save. Tears blurred my vision. 6 years of guilt, of nightmares, of carrying this secret alone, it all rose up in my throat, threatening to choke me. Like whom? His voice was rough, raw, as though he had been screaming, or perhaps merely had not spoken in days. I should answer, should explain, should. But terror overwhelmed me suddenly. What was I doing here? This was madness. He was a stranger, a werewolf, a creature my father hunted and killed. And I was alone with him in the dark, having freed myself from one monster only to seek out another. I turned and fled. Behind me, I thought I heard him call out, but I did not stop, did not look back, just ran up the stairs and through the door and into the garden, where I collapsed beneath the willow and wept until I had no tears left. When I finally returned to my chambers hours later, Helena took one look at my face and asked no questions, merely helped me undress and brought me warm milk with honey and sat beside my bed until I finally, fitfully, slept. I dreamed of amber eyes watching me from the darkness. And for the first time in 6 years, in my dream, I did not run away. Chapter 2. I did not sleep. Oh, I closed my eyes. I lay perfectly still beneath the coverlet, breathing slowly, evenly, until Helena was convinced I had drifted off and retired to her own small chamber adjoining mine. I waited until I heard her door close, then opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. The plasterwork was decorated with cherubs and clouds, painted during my grandmother's time when such things were fashionable. I had spent countless sleepless nights studying every curve and shadow of that ceiling, counting cherubs when the nightmares grew too loud, tracing the patterns of clouds when panic made my chest too tight to breathe. Tonight, I counted nothing. I simply lay there, my mind racing, replaying the evening's events in an endless, torturous loop. Dorian's hands on me, his whispered threats, the satisfaction of my knee connecting with his groin, a small, fierce joy I knew I should not feel but could not help, then the guards' voices. The dungeon, the werewolf in chains. Those amber eyes, finding mine in the darkness. You are like him. What had possessed me to say such a thing? I had kept that secret for 6 years, locked it away so deeply that some days I could almost pretend it had been a nightmare, nothing more. Yet the moment I saw him, the words had spilled out like blood from a wound. I had told no one, not Helena, who would have kept the secret but worried herself sick. Not Cordelia, who would have been endangered by the knowledge. Not even Adrian, though I trusted him above all others. Yet I had nearly confessed everything to a complete stranger. A werewolf, a creature my father would kill without hesitation. Foolish, dangerous, reckless. And yet, the memory of those burns on his wrists, the silver eating into flesh, poisoning blood, the way he had knelt there in the darkness, clearly in agony, yet his eyes had been fierce, unbroken. How long before my father grew bored with simple captivity? How long before he decided to make sport of this new prize? Days, I thought, perhaps less. The cell at the corridor's end, I knew that cell. It was where my father kept his special prisoners, the ones he wanted to toy with before killing. I had watched one such prisoner die 6 years ago. I would not watch another. The decision crystallized in my mind with a clarity that felt almost like calm. It was madness, of course, absolute madness, but madness seemed preferable to lying here, doing nothing, carrying one more death on my conscience. I rose from bed, moving silently in the darkness. My hands knew the geography of my room by heart, every piece of furniture, every floorboard that creaked, every shadow that might hide a watcher. The wardrobe first. I pushed aside the evening gowns, the day dresses, all the trappings of my station, until I found what I sought. The simple gray dress I wore when I wished to move through the palace unnoticed. Servant's clothing, more or less, plain enough to be invisible. I dressed quickly, fingers fumbling slightly with buttons and laces. No corset, I could not manage the lacing alone, and besides, I needed to move freely. Just the dress, a dark cloak, and the sturdy shoes Helena had procured for me years ago when I had asked to learn to walk properly, by which I meant to run if necessary. Then the tools. I had been gathering them for 2 days, ever since I overheard the guards. Each item carefully stolen, carefully hidden, carefully planned. From beneath my mattress, a heavy hammer taken from the groundskeeper's shed during my afternoon walk. The weight of it was reassuring, solid. From the back of my writing desk drawer, a file pinched from the silversmith's workshop when I had gone to have a bracelet repaired. The silversmith was half blind and had not noticed. From my jewelry box, hidden beneath a false bottom, lockpicks. Helena had taught me the skill when I was 16, part of her comprehensive education in things a young lady might need to know. She had never explained why I might need to know how to pick locks. I had never asked. I gathered everything into a small leather satchel, another theft, this one from Adrian's room during one of our rare stolen moments together last month. He would not miss it. He barely used it. Forgive me, brother, I thought, for this and for what I am about to do. Because if this went wrong, when this went wrong, a more honest part of my mind corrected, Adrian would be the one to face the consequences. He was my father's heir now, despite being only 18. Any scandal attached to me would touch him as well. But I could not think of that now, could not afford to consider consequences. I had spent 6 years being careful, being cautious, being the dutiful daughter who caused no trouble. And it had gained me nothing except an engagement to a monster. I paused at my writing desk, pulling out a sheet of paper and my pen. For a long moment, I hesitated. Then I wrote quickly before I could reconsider. Adrian, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Do not look for me. Do not endanger yourself on my account. I am making a choice, perhaps a foolish one, but mine nonetheless. Tell father whatever you wish. Tell him I was mad, hysterical, overcome with wedding nerves. Tell him Dorian drove me to distraction. Tell him anything that will keep you safe. I love you, dearest brother. You have been the only light in a very dark place. Remember me kindly. S. I folded the note carefully and placed it in the center of my bed, where Helena would find it in the morning. She would bring it to Adrian before my father learned of my disappearance. I had to trust in that. I had to trust in many things I could not control. Drawing a deep breath, I pulled the cloak's hood over my head and slipped out of my chamber. The palace at night was a different creature than during the day. Shadows pooled in corners, thick and dark as spilled ink. The servants had retired hours ago, leaving the corridors empty save for the occasional guard on patrol. But I knew their routes, had mapped them years ago during other sleepless nights when I had wandered like a ghost through my own home. I moved through the hidden passages, the servants' stairs, the forgotten corridors that riddled the palace like wormholes in old wood. My father had lived here his entire life and probably knew a fraction of these secret ways. I had made it my business to know them all. The satchel bumped against my hip with each step, a constant reminder of what I was about to do. My heart hammered, and my hands wanted to shake, but I forced them steady. Forced my breathing even. Forced myself to move with purpose rather than panic. You can do this, you must do this. For him, for the one who died, for yourself. The garden entrance was exactly as I had left it, the door still unlocked, the key still hidden behind the loose stone. I retrieved it with trembling fingers and descended once more into the dark. The torches had burned lower, their light dimmer than before. The smell was the same, blood and fear and something wild. The thieves in the first 2 cells did not even look up as I passed, lost in their own despair, awaiting their own deaths. I felt a pang of sympathy but pushed it aside. I could not save everyone. I could barely save one. I moved to the last cell, my footsteps silent on the stone floor. He was awake. I knew this before I saw him, felt it in the way the darkness seemed to thicken, to watch. When I stepped into the circle of torchlight, those amber eyes were already fixed on the corridor, on me. We stared at one another. He looked worse than he had hours ago. The fever was setting in, I could see it in the flush on his cheeks, the too bright quality of his eyes. The silver was poisoning him, slowly but surely. Without treatment, he would die. Perhaps not as quickly as my father's games would kill him, but just as certainly. You returned. His voice was rough, suspicious, but also curious. Why? I set down the satchel and pulled out the lockpicks. To free you. Why? More forcefully now, and I heard the confusion beneath the suspicion. As though kindness was so foreign a concept, he could not comprehend it. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the picks. I knelt before the cell door, fitting the tools into the lock, and tried to focus on the familiar task rather than the insanity of what I was attempting. Because I could not save the last one. Silence, then. The last, what are you talking about? The lock was old, stiff from disuse. I jiggled the picks carefully, feeling for the tumblers. Helena's patient voice in my memory, gentle pressure. Listen for the click. Each lock has its own language, child. You must learn to hear it speak. 6 years ago, I said quietly, not looking at him, focusing on the lock because if I met those eyes, I might lose my nerve entirely. I watched my father execute a werewolf in the courtyard. I was 15. I hid in the shadows and did nothing while they killed him. The lock resisted. I applied more pressure, and the pick slipped, scraping against metal with a small shriek that made me flinch. Careful, careful, you have time. Except I did not have time. The guards made rounds every hour. I had perhaps 30 minutes before. Footsteps. Distant but approaching. My heart stopped. The pick slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering against the stone floor with a sound that seemed loud as thunder. Hide, his voice urgent and low, now. But there was nowhere to hide. The corridor was empty save for the cells, and the torchlight reached every corner, if the guards came this way. The footsteps grew louder. I abandoned the lockpicks and pressed myself against the wall beside his cell, where the shadows were deepest. Perhaps if I remained absolutely still. 2 guards rounded the corner, laughing about something, their voices echoing off stone walls. Telling you the girl in the tavern was sweet on me. You saw how she looked. She was looking at your purse, you fool, not your face. They were moving this way. In moments they would see me. I held my breath, pressed myself smaller against the wall, and prayed to a God I was not certain I believed in. Please, please let them pass, please. Oi, what's this? One of them had spotted the lockpicks on the floor. No, oh God, no. The guard bent to retrieve them, turning them over in his hands. Lockpicks, what in the name of? Someone's been down here. The second guard's hand went to his sword. Search the cells, now. This was it then. I would be caught, dragged before my father, punished. And the werewolf would die, and it would be my fault for botching this so spectacularly. The guards moved toward the cells, torches raised. Then movement, faster than should have been possible. A rattling of chains, a low, warning growl that raised every hair on my body. The guard spun toward the last cell, toward him. Careful, one of them muttered, the beast's awake. Beast is right, look at it, more animal than man. I could not see him from my position, but I heard the chains move again, heard another growl. Deeper this time, inhuman, the sound of something that knew how to kill and was considering it. Think it could have gotten the pick somehow. Don't be daft, it's chained, can't reach more than a foot in any direction. A pause. Still, best report this to the captain. Someone's been down here and it weren't supposed to be anyone. What about the beast? What about it? It's not going anywhere, come on. They moved back down the corridor, their voices fading. I remained frozen against the wall, not daring to breathe, until I heard the door at the top of the stairs close. Only then did I allow myself to move, to sag against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. He had drawn their attention deliberately, had made himself the focus, given me a chance to remain hidden. Why? I retrieved the lockpicks with shaking hands and returned to the cell door. This time, I did not allow myself to think, to hesitate, to consider consequences. I simply worked the lock until... Click! The door swung open, with a creak of protesting hinges. I stepped inside the cell. He watched me approach with eyes that gleamed in the dimness, unreadable and intense. Up close, the damage was worse. The burns from the silver manacles were deep, the flesh around them blackened and weeping. The bullet wound in his shoulder was inflamed, infection setting in despite the stitches. He knelt in a pool of his own blood, fresh and old, and the smell of it, copper and something wilder, made my stomach turn. How was he even conscious? How was he even alive? This is madness, he said, watching me kneel before him with the hammer and file. They will kill you for this. Then they shall kill me. I examined the manacles, trying to determine how they locked. I can live with that consequence more easily than living with inaction. You do not even know me. I know enough. The locking mechanism was more complex than I had anticipated. Silver worked into iron, reinforced, designed to hold something far stronger than human. I positioned the file and began working at it, the rasp of metal on metal obscenely loud in the confined space. I know you do not deserve to die for my father's entertainment. Your father, his eyes widened slightly, the first genuine expression I had seen on his face. You are the king's daughter, the princess. I am a girl with a hammer and file, attempting to free a werewolf before the guards return. I struck the lock with the hammer, trying to break the mechanism. Titles seem rather beside the point at present. Despite everything, the pain he must be in, the situation, the absurdity, his mouth twitched, almost a smile. What is your name? I asked, striking the lock again. Kieran, a pause, Kieran Ashwood. I am Seraphina, though I suppose you knew that already. Strike, the lock held firm. Everyone knows the king's disappointing daughter. Is that what they call you? Among other things, I believe willful, difficult, and unmarriageable are currently favored, though that last one has apparently been solved through my betrothal to a sadistic monster. Strike. So really, things are looking up. You are betrothed. Against my will, to a man who has killed 2 previous wives and plans to lock me in a tower and, well, let us say his intentions are not honorable. Strike. The lock was beginning to give. Which is one reason why I am down here, freeing you instead of sleeping peacefully in my bed like a sensible person. And the other reasons. I paused, the hammer raised, met those amber eyes. Because 6 years ago, I watched your kind die and did nothing. Because I have lived with that guilt every day since. Because I am tired of being helpless. Strike. Because perhaps if I save you, I can finally sleep without seeing his eyes in my dreams. The lock gave with a crack of breaking metal. The manacle fell away from his left wrist. He made a sound, half gasp, half groan, as the silver released his flesh. The burns beneath were terrible, the skin blackened and raw. I had to look away for a moment, swallowing against nausea. One more, I said, moving to the other wrist. Hold still. As though I have a choice. I almost laughed, wild, inappropriate, but bubbling up nonetheless. Here I was, locked in a dungeon cell with a werewolf, committing what was surely treason, and he was making sardonic comments about his lack of options. The second lock proved more stubborn. I struck it again and again, the sound echoing off the walls, far too loud. Surely the guards would hear. It broke. The manacle fell away. For a moment, Kieran simply remained kneeling, as though he could not quite believe he was free. Then, slowly, he lowered his arms, and I saw him bite back a cry as muscles that had been held in one position for days protested the movement. "Can you stand?" I asked. He tried, got halfway up, and his legs buckled. I caught his arm, the uninjured one, and helped him steady himself. He was burning with fever, his skin hot even through his clothing. "The silver is poisoning you," I said. "You need a healer." "What I need is to leave this place." He was leaning on me more heavily now, and I realized just how tall he was, how broad, how utterly massive compared to my slender frame. Before the guards return. "I agree, but—" Sera, where are you? I know you are down here," I followed. Cordelia's voice from the corridor. Horror flooded through me in a cold wave. No. She appeared at the cell door, took in the scene, me, the freed werewolf, the broken chains scattered on the floor, and her eyes went wide as saucers. Her mouth opened to scream. Kieran moved. One moment he was leaning on me, barely able to stand. The next, he had crossed the cell in a blur of motion, and his hand was over Cordelia's mouth, his other arm pinning her arms to her sides. She struggled, tried to scream against his palm, her eyes wild with terror. "Listen to me very carefully," Kieran said, his voice deadly calm despite the fever, despite the pain. "If you wish both you and your friend to survive this night, you will keep absolutely silent. Do you understand?" Cordelia's eyes met mine over his hand. I saw the fear there, the confusion, the betrayal. "I am sorry," I mouthed. "I am so sorry." "Not if you comprehend," Kieran said. After a long, terrible moment, Cordelia nodded. "Good, now listen. The princess is coming with me as insurance against pursuit. Try to raise an alarm before we are clear of the palace, and I will snap her neck before the guards can reach us. Nod if you understand." Another nod, though Cordelia's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to protest, wanted to tell her this was my choice, that I was not being taken against my will, that she should not blame herself or him. But there was no time for explanations. Kieran released her, and Cordelia stumbled back, pressing herself against the corridor wall. "Delia," I began. "Do not follow us," Kieran said, his hand closing around my wrist, not painfully, but firmly. "Do not tell anyone what you saw here for at least an hour. If you value your friend's life, you will give us that much time." He pulled me toward the corridor. I looked back at Cordelia, tried to convey everything I could not say aloud. "I am sorry, I love you. Forgive me, do not follow." Then we were moving, out of the cell, down the corridor, up the stairs. Behind us, I heard Cordelia sob once, a broken sound that made my heart ache. But we could not stop, could not go back. We emerged into the garden, into the night air that smelled of jasmine and roses. Kieran paused, swaying, and I realized he was nearly at the end of his strength. "There is a door in the eastern wall," I said quickly. "A servant's entrance, if we can reach it." A maid appeared on the garden path, carrying linens. She saw us, Kieran, shirtless and bloodied, me in my servant's dress and cloak, and her mouth opened to scream. Kieran moved again, that impossible speed, his hand covering her mouth. "Sleep now," he said softly, and something in his voice, some quality I could not name, made her eyes flutter closed. She went limp, and he lowered her gently to the ground. "What did you do?" I whispered. "She will wake in an hour with a headache and no memory of us. It is a small mercy." He straightened, and I saw the cost of that movement in how he swayed. "The door, now." We ran. Or rather, I ran and he stumbled alongside me, leaning on me more heavily with each step. His fever was worsening. I could feel the heat of it even through his skin. He needed medicine, rest, treatment for the silver poisoning. What he had was a half-mad princess, dragging him through a garden in the dead of night. The eastern wall loomed before us. The door was small, barely noticeable, designed for servants to bring in supplies. I had used it dozens of times over the years when I needed to escape the palace for a few hours of freedom. It was locked. Of course it was locked. I pulled out the lockpicks with shaking hands and set to work. This lock was newer, better maintained than the dungeon cells. My picks slipped once, twice. "Hurry," Kieran muttered. He was scanning the garden behind us, and I knew he was listening for pursuit. For the guards who would come when Cordelia raised the alarm, or when the maid woke, or when anyone, discovered what I had done. The lock clicked. The door swung open onto darkness and the scent of pine trees. "Freedom." "Go," Kieran said, pushing me through the door with the last of his strength. I went, and he followed, and the door closed behind us with a soft thud of finality. We were outside the palace walls. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I had lived within those walls for 21 years. Every memory I possessed, every moment of my life, contained within stone and gilt and carefully maintained propriety. And now I stood outside them, in the darkness, with a werewolf I had freed from my father's dungeons. There was no going back from this. "We need to move," Kieran said. He was leaning against a tree, his breathing labored. "They will come looking. We need distance." "You can barely walk." "I will manage." "You have a fever, silver poisoning, an infected wound you need." "What I need is to not be recaptured." He pushed off from the tree, swaying dangerously. "And you need to not be found with me, princess, unless you wish to share my fate." He was right, of course he was right. But looking at him, at the barely conscious werewolf, who had drawn the guard's attention to save me, who had protected me even as I freed him, I found I could not simply abandon him to stumble through the woods alone. "Which direction?" I asked. He blinked at me. "What?" "Which direction should we travel? I assume you have some destination in mind." "You are not coming with me." "I most certainly am." "Absolutely not. You cannot." He seemed to be having trouble forming words, the fever making his thoughts sluggish. "You will slow me down. You are a liability, a pampered princess who will be dead within a week." "I freed you," I pointed out. "That suggests a certain resourcefulness." "You freed me for your own guilt. Your penance is paid. Go back to your palace." "I cannot go back. Have you not been listening? I am betrothed to a sadistic monster who has already threatened to lock me in a tower and torture me for my disobedience tonight, and that is assuming my father does not simply execute me for freeing you." I crossed my arms. "So no, I cannot go back. I am coming with you." "This is not an adventure, princess. This is survival, real survival. Cold nights and hunger and danger at every turn. You have no idea what you're asking for." "Perhaps not, but I know what I am running from, and I would rather face the unknown than return to that life." I stepped closer, meeting those fever-bright eyes. "Besides, you are wounded. You need someone to watch your back, at least until the silver is out of your system." "I have survived alone for 18 years. Then one more companion should not present a problem." We stared at one another in the darkness. "You are insane," he said finally. "I have been called worse, usually by my father." I adjusted my cloak. "Are we leaving, or shall I begin screaming and summon the guards myself?" For a long moment, I thought he would refuse, would leave me here, disappear into the forest, and I would be forced to either return to the palace or strike out on my own with no knowledge of how to survive. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a groan. "If you slow me down, I am leaving you behind." "Understood." "And if you complain?" "I shall not complain." "And if—" "Kieran, we are wasting time. The guards will be here soon." He stared at me for another moment, then shook his head slowly, as though he could not quite believe what he was agreeing to. "North," he said finally. "We go north. There are caves in the mountains, 3 days' walk. We can hide there until I heal." 3 days? "Assuming we do not get caught, assuming I do not die from this fever, assuming you can actually manage to keep up." He turned and began walking, his gait unsteady. Substantial assumptions, all of them. I followed, falling into step beside him. Behind us, I heard shouts. The alarm had been raised. Kieran heard it too. He quickened his pace despite the pain it must have caused him. "Run," he said. So I ran. We had been moving for perhaps an hour when Kieran finally collapsed. One moment he was walking, stumbling really, leaning on trees for support, his breathing harsh and labored. The next, his legs simply gave out and he fell, crashing through the underbrush with a sound that seemed loud enough to wake the dead. I was at his side immediately, my hands on his shoulders. Kieran, can you hear me?" His eyes opened, but they were unfocused, glassy with fever. "Cannot, need to keep moving." His hand fumbled for mine, gripped it weakly. "They will find us, need to." "SHH, rest for a moment, just a moment." "No time for," his eyes rolled back, and he went limp. I pressed my fingers to his throat, feeling for a pulse. It was there, rapid and thready, but present. The fever was worse, much worse. His skin burned against my palm, and when I pulled my hand away, my fingers came back stained with blood from his reopened shoulder wound. He needs a healer, medicine, clean water and bandages and rest. I had none of those things. What I had was a half-conscious werewolf, a forest I barely knew, and guards somewhere behind us, hunting. I looked around, trying to orient myself. The trees were thick here, the undergrowth dense. A stream burbled nearby. I could hear it, though I could not see it in the darkness. Water, that was something at least. I managed to drag Kieran's dead weight far enough to reach the stream. It was barely more than a trickle, but the water was cold and clear. I cupped my hands, bringing water to his lips. "Drink," I urged. "Please, Kieran, you need to drink." He did not respond. I tilted his head back, let the water trickle into his mouth. He coughed, sputtered, but some of it went down. I repeated the process several times, then turned my attention to his wounds. The shoulder was worse than I had thought. The stitches had torn, and the wound was inflamed, hot to the touch. I tore strips from my underskirt, the one piece of fine fabric I was wearing, and soaked them in the stream, then pressed them against the wound. He groaned, tried to pull away. "I know it hurts, I am sorry, but I must clean it." The burns on his wrists were beyond my limited knowledge. I bathed them as gently as I could, but I knew they needed more than water. They needed medicine I did not have, could not provide. What have I done? I saved him from the dungeon only to watch him die in the forest. No, I would not allow that, would not accept it. I had not come this far to fail now. I worked through the night, bathing his wounds, giving him water, covering him with my cloak when the shaking began. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes calling out in a language I did not recognize, sometimes simply lying still as death. Dawn found us still by the stream, me exhausted and filthy, him burning with fever. And somewhere in the distance, I heard dogs barking. The hunting party, my father's men tracking us. I looked at Kieran, unconscious and helpless, looked at the forest around us, unfamiliar and vast. I had promised not to slow him down, had promised to keep up. I was already breaking those promises. But I would not leave him, could not. To abandon him now, after everything, would make me no better than the girl who had hidden in shadows 6 years ago while a werewolf died. I would not be that girl again. So I gathered what strength remained to me, slipped my arms beneath his shoulders, and began to drag him deeper into the forest. Away from the barking dogs. Away from the life I had known. Toward something I could not name, but desperately hoped existed. Freedom, safety, a chance to finally sleep without nightmares. A chance for both of us. If we survived.
Chapter 3. Pain came back to me first, not gently, not gradually. Pain returned like a blade slid between my ribs and twisted for spite. Silver, it burned through my wrists, my shoulder, my blood, hot and invasive, alive in a way poison should not be. I lay very still, because experience had taught me that moving only invited more agony. Am I dead? No, death would have been quiet, this was not. Voices reached me through the haze. Orders are clear, the king wants them alive. And the beast. If it resists, kill it. The princess is to be brought back unharmed. His Majesty was very specific. Footsteps, leaves crushed under boots, the sound of men who believed the forest belonged to them. I forced my eyes open, trees, a stream nearby, pine and damp earth and blood, mine. I lay hidden beneath branches arranged with surprising care. I did not remember getting here. Which meant, you are awake. I turned my head too quickly and paid for it. The world tilted, my vision darkened at the edges. She sat a few feet away, back against a tree, knees drawn up, mud-streaked, hair loose and tangled. The servant's dress torn nearly to ruin, stained with my blood. She looked exhausted, she looked furious. You are not very good at staying unconscious, she added. I carried you for half the night. It would be rude if you died now. My throat burned. How long? Since you collapsed, hours, she tilted her head. You drooled a little. I chose not to comment at the time. I closed my eyes. You are welcome, she said. I tried to sit up. Pain flared, white and blinding, and I fell back with a sound I would later pretend had been dignified. Do not do that, she snapped, already moving closer. Have you a death wish? Yes, I said hoarsely, but this is not how I planned it. She pressed her lips together, clearly restraining several comments. You were burning up. I cleaned the wounds as best I could. I do not know how to treat silver. You should have left me. Her head snapped up. Oh, absolutely not. You would have escaped faster alone. And abandoned you to be dragged back in chains, she laughed sharply. I am many things, but I am not a coward. You are a princess. She straightened. Now I am Sera, just Sera, and Sera does not leave people to die because it is inconvenient. I studied her, really looked, the scraped hands, the trembling she was pretending did not exist. Why? I asked quietly. Why free me? Her jaw tightened. We are not having this conversation. We are. No, she leaned back against the tree. We are having the conversation where you drink this water and do not bleed to death. She lifted a crude water skin toward me. I hesitated. She raised an eyebrow. If you die of stubbornness, I shall haunt you. I drank. Slowly, she said, you are not a camel. I lay back, breathing through the pain. The silver poison churned inside me, fever rising. You should leave, I said again, weaker this time. She stared at me. Do you talk this much normally, or am I special? I said nothing. She sighed. You are doing it again. Doing what? That thing where you stop responding and hope I shall wander off. It has worked before. Tragic, she stood. Can you walk? No. Wonderful, she glanced toward the forest. Can you pretend to walk? Yes. That is all I need. We moved north slowly, painfully. I leaned more on her than I meant to. She did not comment, only adjusted her grip, jaw clenched. After the third stumble, she muttered, If you fall on me again, I shall push you into the stream. Noted. You are remarkably calm for someone dying. I am too tired to panic. She huffed. I am panicking enough for both of us. She talked as we walked, about the forest, about her feet, about how she had never slept outside and how everything itched. I did not respond. Are you listening? Yes. Name one thing I just said. Your feet hurt. She smiled, pleased. Good, that means you are not delirious yet. By midday ghosts walked beside us, my pack long dead, their eyes accusing. Why did you survive? Sera, I murmured, if I start talking to people who are not there. You already are. Stop me. She squeezed my arm. Stay with me. Footsteps, I stiffened. Hide. She pulled me into a thicket, pressed close, too close, her breath warm against my neck. She whispered, Do you think they have gone or are pretending to be gone because? Sera. That seems like something guards would do. Sera. Especially arrogant ones. Can you please keep quiet, woman? Silence, 3 heartbeats, then. Oh, woman, not princess. I closed my eyes. I like it, she whispered cheerfully. Feels honest. The guards passed. I listened to their footsteps fade, counting heartbeats, forcing myself to remain still despite every instinct screaming to run. When they were gone, she leaned back, eyes bright. You are very grouchy for someone I saved. You are very loud for someone hiding. Balance. By evening, I could no longer stand. The fever had climbed steadily throughout the day, making my vision swim and my thoughts scatter like leaves in wind. Every step felt like walking through deep water. The silver was winning its slow battle against my system. We have to stop, Sera said. Her voice came from very far away. No, I swallowed, tasted copper. I need to shift. Her face went pale. Now. It will help some. I leaned heavily against a tree, felt bark bite into my palm. The change burns out toxins, forces them through faster. And if it kills you, then at least I shall be useful as a cautionary tale. She stared at me, then nodded, jaw set with determination I was beginning to recognize. Fine, but if you die, I shall be furious. Noted. I found a small clearing just off the game trail we had been following. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy, painting everything gold in shadow. Sera stood at the edge, watching, uncertain. You should look away, I managed. It is not pleasant. I have seen worse. You have not seen this. But she did not look away. The change tore through me. It always hurt, that was the nature of it. Bone breaking and reforming, muscles tearing and knitting back together, skin splitting to make way for fur. But with the silver in my system, it was agony. I felt myself fragment, human thoughts scattering as wolf instincts surged forward. The fever burned hotter, impossibly hot, and for a moment I thought she was right, this would kill me. The silver would win and I would die mid-shift, stuck between forms, neither man nor beast. Then it was done. I stood on 4 legs, shaking. Steam rose from my fur in the cooling evening air. The world looked different through wolf eyes, sharper, clearer, alive with scents and sounds that human senses could never capture. The silver still burned, but duller now, muted. The shift had forced some of it through my system, expelled it with sweat and the violence of transformation. I was not healed, but I was functional. I looked at Sera. She stared back, eyes wide, her heart hammered. I could hear it, rapid and startled, but not afraid, awed. You are, she took a step closer, then another. You are irritatingly magnificent. My wolf preened at the compliment, tail lifting slightly. Vain creature, I told it. She hesitated, hand half raised. May I? I lowered my head in what I hoped was clear permission. Her fingers touched my fur carefully, tentative. Then, when I did not snap at her, more confidently, she ran her hand from my head down my neck, wonder clear on her face. So soft, she murmured, I expected. I do not know, coarser, like a regular wolf. I am not a regular wolf, I wanted to say, but wolves could not speak, so I settled for huffing warm breath against her arm. She laughed, surprised and delighted. Was that an offended huff? I looked away pointedly. It was, you are offended. Her laugh grew wild and free. I apologize for comparing you to a regular wolf. You are clearly a very special, very magnificent wolf who is absolutely not at all vain about it. I nipped at her sleeve gently, no teeth, just pressure, a warning to stop mocking me. She grinned, entirely unrepentant. You shall not eat me, shall you? Unlikely, I thought. I shall take your silence as agreement. She stepped back, assessing. Right, so, can you carry me, or should I attempt to keep walking on my ruined feet? I lowered myself to the ground in answer. She climbed onto my back awkwardly, gripping handfuls of fur, swinging one leg over. If I fall, this is entirely on you. I have never ridden anything actually. Horses made me nervous. I stood carefully, testing her balance. She was lighter than I expected, but she sat wrong, too rigid, too high on my shoulders. I shifted, and she yelped, gripping tighter. Warning, give me warning before you do that. I huffed again. Fine, fine, I shall adjust. She shifted lower, pressing closer to my neck, relaxing her death grip slightly. Better. Better. I took a step, then another. She swayed, but held on. North, she asked quietly. North. I ran. Not at full speed, I was still weak, still fighting fever, still aware of the precious, stubborn cargo on my back, but faster than walking, faster than her bleeding feet could have managed. The forest blurred around us, trees became shadows, paths became suggestions. My wolf knew this land instinctively, knew where to step, where to leap, where to slow for rough terrain. Above me, Sierra held on. After the initial terror, after she found her balance, I felt her relax, lean into the movement, trust me to carry her safely. Then she laughed. Breathless, wild, exhilarated, the sound of someone who had never felt this free, this fast, this alive. My wolf rumbled with satisfaction. Ours, it said, simple and certain, protect, keep safe. She's not ours, I argued. She is temporary, a debt being paid, nothing more.
Chapter 4. The wolf ran like liquid shadow through the forest. I clung to Kieran's back, fingers buried in thick fur, face pressed low against his neck to avoid branches that whipped past in the darkness. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest, my thighs from gripping, my arms from holding on, my feet from the hours of walking on bare, bleeding soles. But God, we were fast. Trees blurred. The ground disappeared beneath us in great, bounding leaps. Wind tore at my hair, my ruined dress, bringing with it the scent of pine and earth and freedom. I had never moved like this, had never felt this wild, reckless rush of pure velocity. In the palace, I had walked sedately down marble corridors, sat primly in carriages, moved always with the careful grace expected of a princess. This was the opposite of careful. This was alive. A laugh bubbled up from my chest, breathless, slightly hysterical, but genuine. It was torn away by the wind the moment it left my lips. Beneath me, I felt Kieran's body shift slightly. Not quite a stumble, but close. A slight hitch in his stride that reminded me he was running on fever and silver poisoning and sheer stubborn will. "Kieran," I shouted over the rush of wind, "you need to stop." He kept running. "I mean it, you are going to collapse." Still running. Stubborn, irritating, impossible. His legs buckled. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just a gradual weakening, his pace slowing, his breathing growing more labored, until finally he simply stopped and lowered himself to the ground with the careful control of someone who knew if he fell, he would not get back up. I slid off his back immediately, my own legs nearly giving out when they took my weight. Every part of me hurt, but I pushed through it, moving to where Kieran lay panting in the underbrush. "You carried me too far," I said, kneeling beside him. "You are burning yourself out." The wolf's amber eyes found mine. They were too bright, fever-glazed, but still aware, still watching me with that unnerving intensity. Then bones began to crack. I looked away, partly to give him privacy, partly because watching the transformation felt intrusive, witnessing something raw and painful that was not meant for my eyes. When the sound stopped and I heard human breathing again, I turned back. Kieran lay curled on his side, naked and shaking. The shoulder wound had reopened, fresh blood seeped through the torn stitches. The burns on his wrists looked worse in the moonlight that filtered through the trees, black and weeping. "We need shelter," I said, already pulling off my cloak. It was the only intact piece of clothing I had left, and I laid it over him. It barely covered anything, he was too large, too broad, but it was something. "Can you walk?" "No," his voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Can you try to walk?" A pause then, maybe. "Good enough." I helped him sit up, which was an adventure in itself. He was dead weight, all muscle and height and fever-hot skin. Somehow, I got my shoulder under his arm, braced myself, and hauled us both upright. He swayed dangerously. "Do not you dare fall on me," I warned. "I am too tired to catch you." "Noted." We stumbled forward. I had no idea where we were going, just away. Away from the direction we had come, away from the hunting party that was surely still searching, away from everything familiar. The forest pressed in around us, dark and endless. My feet left bloody prints on the ground with every step. Kieran's breathing grew more ragged. We would not last the night like this. Then there, a break in the undergrowth. A rocky outcropping, and within it, the shadow-dark mouth of a cave. There, I gasped, pointing. Can you make it? Kieran's answer was to shift more of his weight onto me and keep walking. The cave was shallow, barely deep enough to be called a cave at all. More of an overhang, really, carved into the hillside by water or time or both, but it was shelter. It was hidden. It would have to be enough. I eased Kieran down against the stone wall, where he immediately slumped sideways and closed his eyes. Do not sleep yet, I said, though I desperately wanted to do the same. I need to tend the wounds. No supplies. I have hands and water if I can find it. I listened, heard the distant trickle of a stream. Stay here. Not going anywhere. I limped to the stream, barely 10 feet away, thank God, and examined what I had to work with. The water was cold and clear, flowing over smooth stones. Not much, but it would do for cleaning wounds. I had no container, no cloth, nothing but my ruined dress and my bare hands. Helena's voice in my memory. In the absence of proper tools, child, you improvise. The trick is not to panic. Right, not panicking, I could do that. I tore another strip from my underskirt. I was running out of underskirt at an alarming rate and soaked it in the stream. Then I returned to Kieran, who had not moved. This is going to hurt, I warned. Everything hurts. Fair point. I started with the shoulder. The bullet wound was inflamed, hot to the touch, the edges red and angry. The stitches had torn in several places, and fresh blood mixed with older, dried streaks. I pressed the wet cloth against it. Kieran hissed through his teeth, but did not pull away. Sorry, I murmured, working as gently as I could. I am not a healer. I am barely competent at needlepoint. Better than nothing. I cleaned the wound as best I could, wiping away blood and dirt and whatever else had accumulated during our flight. It needed proper stitching. Medicine. A trained healer who knew what they were doing. What it had was me, a wet rag and determination. The burns next, I said, moving to his wrists. These were worse, much worse. The silver had eaten into the flesh, leaving blackened, weeping wounds that made my stomach turn. I did not know how to treat silver poisoning, did not know if anything I did would help or make it worse. But I had to try. I bathed each wrist carefully, watching Kieran's face for signs of pain. He bore it silently, jaw clenched, eyes closed. Only the rapid rise and fall of his chest betrayed his discomfort. There, I said finally, sitting back, that is the best I can do. He opened his eyes. Your feet. What? Your feet, bleeding, tend them. I looked down. My feet were a mess, cut, bruised, caked with dirt and blood. I had been ignoring them, pushing through the pain, but now that he had mentioned them, they throbbed with renewed intensity. I shall survive. Sera, the way he said my name firm, no room for argument, surprised me. I glanced up to find him watching me with those fever-bright eyes. If your feet get infected, you cannot walk. If you cannot walk, we both die. Tend them. He was right. Of course he was right. I limped back to the stream, sat on a rock, and stuck my feet in the cold water. The relief was immediate and excruciating. I bit back a cry as the water found every cut, every scrape, every raw nerve. I cleaned them as well as I could, tore the last strips from my underskirt to wrap the worst of the cuts. The bandages would not hold long, but they were better than nothing. When I returned to the cave, Kieran had not moved. He lay exactly as I had left him, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Still alive? I asked softly. Unfortunately. I settled beside him, back against the cave wall. Every muscle in my body ached. My hands were shaking from exhaustion or shock or both. The adrenaline that had carried me through the escape, through the flight, through everything, was finally wearing off. We had escaped. We had actually escaped. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had left. Left the palace, left my father, left the only life I had ever known. Adrian's note was back in my room. Cordelia knew what I had done. Helena would find out in the morning. There was no going back from this. Sera. I blinked, yes. What happens when they catch us? Not if, when. He was a realist, apparently. My father will kill you, I said honestly. Slowly for sport, he will make it last. And you. I laughed, though there was no humor in it. I imagine I shall be married to Dorian with great haste, locked in a tower, as promised. If I am lucky, he will tire of me quickly. If I am not, I trailed off, did not finish the thought. Silence stretched between us. I am sorry, Kieran said quietly, that you had to choose this. I am not. The words surprised me, but they were true. I would rather die free than live in that cage. At least this way, I made the choice. It was mine. He turned his head to look at me. You are either very brave or very foolish. Can it not be both? Despite everything, his mouth twitched, almost a smile. We fell into silence after that. Outside the cave, the forest settled into its nighttime rhythms, the call of owls, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, the whisper of wind through leaves. I should have been terrified, should have been second-guessing every decision that led me here. Instead, I felt calm, settled, as though some part of me that had been screaming for years had finally gone quiet. Get some rest, I said. I shall keep watch. You need sleep too. And you need to heal. I shall wake you in a few hours. He looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. His eyes drifted closed, and within minutes, his breathing evened out into the deep rhythm of sleep. I stayed awake, watching the cave entrance, listening for the sounds of pursuit. They did not come, not that night. Sometime in the darkest part of the night, I must have dozed off. I woke to pain, my feet throbbed, my hands ached. Every muscle had stiffened into knots during sleep, and simply breathing hurt. Beside me, Kieran was still unconscious, his skin burning with fever. I pressed my hand to his forehead and immediately jerked it back. He was worse, much worse. The silver was winning. Panic clawed at my throat. I had not come this far, had not risked everything, only to watch him die in a cave from poison I could not treat. There had to be something I could do, some way to help him. I crawled to the cave entrance and looked out at the pre-dawn darkness. The stream still babbled nearby. The forest was quiet save for the occasional night bird. No sign of the hunting party, no sign of anything helpful. I returned to Kieran's side, felt his pulse. It was fast, thready, concerning. His breathing came in short, labored gasps. Do not you dare die, I whispered fiercely. Not now, not after everything. He did not respond, did not even stir. I spent the rest of the night bathing his forehead with cold water, trying to bring the fever down. It did nothing. He burned, and I was helpless to stop it. By the time pale light began to filter into the cave, I was exhausted, terrified, and running out of hope. Kieran needed a healer, real medicine, help I could not provide.
Chapter 5. I woke to the smell of infection. Not mine, though the silver poisoning was there too, a metallic tang that coated the back of my throat. This was different, human, fresh wounds turning sour. Our feet. I forced my eyes open. Dawn light filtered into the cave, gray and weak. Sera sat against the opposite wall, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them. Her eyes were closed, but she was not asleep. Her breathing was wrong, too controlled, too measured. She was in pain and trying to hide it. Typical. I tried to sit up. My body had other ideas. Pain lanced through my shoulder, and I fell back with a sound I would later pretend had been dignified. Her eyes snapped open. You are awake. My voice came out as a croak, unfortunately. She crawled over, actually crawled, which told me how much her feet hurt, and pressed her hand to my forehead. Her touch was cool against my burning skin. Still feverish, she said, frowning, but you are conscious, that is progress. Low bar. I am setting realistic expectations. She moved back to her spot against the wall. How do you feel? Like I was shot with a silver bullet and dragged through a forest. Accurate assessment. I studied her in the growing light. She looked worse than yesterday, dark circles under her eyes, face pale, lips pressed together against pain. The makeshift bandages on her feet were already soaked through with blood and something else. Your feet are infected. I am aware. You need to clean them again. I did last night and this morning. She shifted slightly and winced. I am running out of underskirt to tear into bandages. At this rate, I shall be down to my chemise by tomorrow. Despite the pain, despite everything, I felt my mouth twitch. Scandalous. Horrifying, what would the court say? She tilted her head back against the stone. Oh wait, I do not care what the court says. I am officially ruined, might as well lean into it. Silence fell. I focused on breathing through the pain, on the slow burn of silver working through my system. My wolf was quiet, too quiet, conserving energy or dying, hard to tell. You need food, Sera said suddenly. Both of us do. When was the last time either of us ate? I thought back, day before yesterday, maybe. Wonderful, so we are fleeing, injured and starving. This is going excellently. Your optimism is inspiring. I contain multitudes. She struggled to her feet with a barely suppressed cry of pain. I am going to see if I can find anything edible. Do not die while I am gone. No promises. She limped toward the cave entrance, each step clearly agony. I watched her go, watched her refuse to complain, refuse to show weakness, refuse to be anything less than determinedly capable. Foolish, stubborn woman. My wolf stirred finally. Ours, it said, simple and certain. Absolutely not, I told it. Ours. I closed my eyes and tried to ignore the traitorous beast. She returned empty-handed an hour later, looking frustrated. There is nothing, she announced, or rather there is probably something, but I do not know what is edible and what will kill us. Helena taught me many things, but wilderness survival was not among them. I can hunt tonight. You can barely stand. I shall manage. She gave me a look that suggested she doubted this very much. Right, well, we shall cross that bridge when we come to it. She settled back against the wall with a wince. Outside, the day progressed. I dozed fitfully, waking to check on her, to listen for pursuit, to gauge the silver's progress through my system. It was slower today, still there, still burning, but not racing. Shifting last night had helped. The change sometimes forced toxins through faster, burned them out with the transformation's fire. Or it killed you trying. It could go either way. By afternoon, the fever was marginally better, still present, still concerning, but no longer making me see ghosts in the corners. Sera had not complained once, had not mentioned her feet, her hunger, her exhaustion. She sat against that wall, quiet and watchful, occasionally checking the cave entrance, but otherwise still. Too still. Sera. She looked over, yes. Talk to me. About what? Anything. You were very chatty yesterday. Now you are silent. It is disconcerting. She smiled slightly. I was trying to let you rest. I have rested, now talk. She considered this. What do you want to know? Why did a princess learn lockpicking? Her smile widened. Helena, my caretaker. She said a lady should know how to extract herself from any situation. I thought she meant politically. Turns out she meant literally. Practical woman. She is the reason I survived as long as I did in that place. Sera's expression softened. She was more mother to me than my actual mother, who died when I was 3. Helena taught me everything that mattered, how to read people, how to defend myself, how to appear docile while planning 7 different escape routes. Did she know you were planning this? No, she would have tried to stop me, or worse, tried to come with me. Sera looked down at her hands. I left her a note with Adrian. I hope she understands. The pain in her voice was evident. This escape had cost her more than just a palace. Tell me about your brother, I said. Her face lit up. Adrian is the best of us, genuinely kind, despite our father's best efforts to crush it out of him. He is only 18, but he has more wisdom than men twice his age. She paused. I hope he survives our father's court. I hope he does not let it harden him. He will survive. If he is anything like his sister, he is more resilient than he appears. She glanced at me, surprised. Was that a compliment? An observation. I shall take it. We fell back into comfortable silence. I watched her, noted the way she kept shifting her weight, trying to find a position that did not hurt her feet, the way she pressed her lips together when she thought I was not looking. Let me see your feet, I said. They are fine. Sera. Kieran. We stared at each other. I can smell the infection from here, I said finally. Let me see them. She hesitated, then sighed and extended her legs. Fine, but I am warning you, they are not pleasant. I moved closer slowly because quick movement still made the world tilt, and carefully unwrapped the makeshift bandages. The sight made me want to growl. Her feet were a ruin of cuts and bruises, several wounds clearly infected, swollen and red. How she had walked on these yesterday, how she was still mobile at all, spoke to either impressive pain tolerance or staggering stubbornness. Probably both. This needs proper treatment, I said. Yes, well, when you find a royal physician wandering through the forest, do let me know. There are herbs for infection. I can find them if you can barely move. I am better than yesterday. That is an incredibly low bar. Despite everything, I smiled. You are difficult. I prefer selective about which limitations to accept. Same thing. Entirely different things. I carefully rewrapped her feet with the cleanest strips of fabric I could find. She bore it silently, only the white-knuckled grip on her knees betraying the pain. Tonight, I said, I shall hunt, get food, find herbs, you will stay here and rest. That seems unwise, you should not. Sira, for once, let someone help you. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Fine, but if you collapse again, I shall be very annoyed. Noted. Twilight came slowly. I dozed fitfully as the fever continued its slow retreat. Sira remained watchful, occasionally limping to the cave entrance to check for signs of pursuit. None came. Either we had put enough distance between ourselves and the hunting party, or they were being very quiet about their search. I suspected the latter. As darkness fell, I finally felt strong enough to shift. The change was easier this time, less agony, more natural flow. My wolf emerged, stretched, tested its limits. Still weak, still fighting the silver, but functional. Sira watched with barely concealed fascination. It is strange watching that, beautiful but strange. My wolf preened at beautiful. Traitor, I told it. I nosed at the cave entrance, scenting the night air. Rabbit to the east, deer further north. Water everywhere, the recent rains had left the forest damp and alive. And herbs, the ones I needed, growing near the stream. I looked back at Sira, tried to convey through look alone, stay here, rest, do not follow. She raised an eyebrow. I am not moving. These feet are not carrying me anywhere tonight. Go, hunt. I shall be here when you return. I left. The forest was alive with nighttime sounds, owls hunting, my scurrying, the distant cry of something larger. My wolf moved through it all with practiced ease, following scents, tracking prey. The rabbit was easy, quick chase, clean kill. I buried it near the cave entrance to retrieve later. The herbs took longer. I had to search, nose to the ground, filtering through dozens of plant scents until I found the right ones. Yarrow for wounds, comfrey for bruising, plantain for infection. I gathered what I could carry in my jaws and returned to the cave. Sira was exactly where I had left her, though her eyes were closed. Resting, not sleeping, I could tell by her breathing. I shifted back, ignoring the pain, gathered the herbs. You found them, she said, opening her eyes. Yes, I began crushing the yarrow between two stones, making a rough paste. This will help the infection. Where did you learn herbalism? My uncle Marcus, he knew plants, healing, survival. I did not look at her as I worked. He taught me everything. He sounds like a good man. He was. She was quiet as I worked. When the paste was ready, I moved to her feet. This will sting, I warned. Everything stings at this point. I am building immunity. Despite her bravado, she hissed when I applied the paste to the first wound, but she did not pull away, did not complain, just gripped her knees tighter and breathed through it. There, I said finally, wrapping fresh leaves over the paste. It should help. Change it tomorrow. Thank you. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The hunting, the gathering, the shifting, it had depleted what little energy I had recovered. Sira seemed to notice. Rest, I shall keep watch tonight. You need sleep too. And I shall get it after you, she smiled slightly. We shall trade. You watched over me earlier, now it is my turn. I wanted to argue, to insist I was fine, that I could keep watch, that she should not have to. But I was too tired, the words would not come. I settled against the cave wall, let my eyes close, and drifted into uneasy sleep. I woke to screaming. Not loud, Sera had clamped her hand over her own mouth, muffling the sound, but her eyes were wide with terror, her body rigid, her breathing coming in short, panicked gasps. Nightmare. I was at her side before I consciously decided to move. Sera, I gripped her shoulders carefully. Sera, wake up, you are safe. She fought against my hold, still trapped in whatever horror her mind had conjured. Tears streamed down her face. Sera, firmer now, look at me, you are safe, you are here with me. Her eyes focused, finally found mine, recognition flickered. Kieran. Her voice was small, broken. I am here, you are safe. She collapsed against me, sobbing into my shoulder. I held her awkwardly, unsure what to do with my hands, uncertain how to comfort someone when I could barely remember being comforted myself. But I held her, let her cry, said nothing because what was there to say? Eventually the sobs quieted. She pulled back slightly, wiping at her face. Sorry, I did not mean to. Do not apologize. She took a shaky breath, the nightmares. Was it about the other lycan? She nodded. I dream about it, about him. Another breath, steadier this time. He was young, maybe 20, dark hair, amber eyes like yours. They chained him in the courtyard at dawn. I went very still. Tears were streaming down her face again. I was hiding in the shadows by the garden wall. I should have done something, said something, but I was terrified and... It was not your fault. She looked at me, eyes red and swollen. I could have. You were a child against armed guards and a king. I cupped her face with one hand, forcing her to hold my gaze. You survived, that is all anyone could ask of you. The guilt you carry is not yours to bear. But... No, firmer now. Whatever happened that day, whatever you witnessed, it was your father's cruelty, not your failing, do you understand? She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly she nodded. I dream about his eyes, she whispered. They found mine just for a second before the end, I think he saw me, knew someone was watching, and I wonder if that made it worse or better, to die knowing someone bore witness. I pulled her back against my chest, let her rest her head on my shoulder. It made it better, I said quietly. To be seen, to be remembered, that matters more than you know. She did not respond, just pressed closer, her breathing gradually evening out. We stayed like that as the night deepened, her finally allowing herself to be vulnerable, me finally allowing myself to offer comfort. Two broken people finding unexpected solace in shared pain. Kieran, she murmured eventually. Yes. Thank you for not telling me I am being foolish. You are many things, Sera. Foolish is not one of them. She smiled against my shoulder. You are getting better at compliments. Do not get used to it. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I was getting used to her stubborn courage, her sharp humor, her refusal to break even when everything around her was breaking. My wolf stirred again, ours, it said, even more certain than before.
Chapter 6. I woke to find myself still pressed against Kieran's chest, his arms loose around me. Sometime in the night, I had ceased weeping and simply remained. He had not moved, had not left me, though surely his shoulder must have grown stiff from my weight. The cave was gray with early morning light. I could hear Kieran's steady breathing, feel the rise and fall of his chest beneath my cheek. His heartbeat was slower than mine, steady, strong, a rhythm I had unconsciously matched my own breathing to during the night. I should have been mortified. A lady did not sleep in a gentleman's arms, though I supposed that particular rule of propriety seemed rather beside the point, given everything else I had done. I had fled my father's house, traveled unchaperoned with a man, wore torn clothing that barely constituted decent covering, slept on cave floors and tended wounds that would make any proper lady swoon. And yet, lying here in Kieran's arms felt like the most natural thing I had ever done. You are awake. His voice rumbled through his chest, vibrating against my ear. I pulled back slightly, suddenly aware of my disheveled state. My hair had come completely loose from its braid, falling in tangled waves around my shoulders. My face must be streaked with tear tracks and dirt. My dress, what remained of it, was wrinkled beyond salvation. I apologize, I did not mean to burden you with. Do not, the word was firm, brooking no argument. Do not apologize for grief honestly expressed. I looked up at him. His amber eyes were gentle in the dawn light, watchful but not pitying. One hand still rested at the small of my back, warm and solid. You must think me terribly weak, I said quietly, weeping over nightmares like a child. I think you are carrying weight that would crush most people. I think you witnessed something terrible at 15 years of age and have borne it alone ever since. I think, he paused, his hand moving to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture surprisingly tender. I think you are remarkably strong to have survived it at all. Something in my chest loosened at those words. Helena had said similar things over the years, but hearing them from Kieran, who understood loss in ways most people could not, made them feel true in a way they never had before. Thank you, I said softly, for not leaving, for staying even when I made rather a spectacle of myself. You needed comfort, there is no shame in that. We sat in the quiet for a moment, the intimacy of the moment settling around us like morning mist. Then Kieran shifted, pulling gently away. We should rise, there is much to do if we are to continue north today. Of course. I moved to stand, acutely aware of how stiff my muscles had become from sleeping on stone. My feet, while improved from Kieran's treatment, still ached with each step. He noticed immediately. How do they feel? Better than yesterday. That is not an answer. I sighed. They hurt, but not as badly as before. The herbs helped tremendously. He nodded, already moving toward the cave entrance. Stay here. I shall check the area, ensure we are still alone. Kieran. Sera, please, just this once, do not argue with me. There was something in his voice, not command but plea. He needed to protect, to ensure my safety. It was how he managed something, some old wound I did not yet understand. Very well, I agreed. But do not be long. I am quite capable of worrying myself into a state if left alone with my thoughts. Despite the gravity of the situation, he almost smiled. Noted. He returned perhaps 10 minutes later, his posture relaxed enough that I knew we remained undiscovered. The hunting party has moved on, he said. Their trail heads northwest. We are safe for the moment. How long do we have? Today, certainly, perhaps tomorrow. They will realize their error eventually and double back. Then we should use the time wisely. He moved to the back of the cave where the rabbit from yesterday, God, had it only been yesterday, still hung from where he had secured it. The fire had long since died to cold ash, but he set about rebuilding it with practiced efficiency. I watched, fascinated, as he arranged kindling, struck flint to steel, coaxed flame from nothing with patient determination. Within moments, a small fire crackled to life. You make it seem effortless, I observed. Years of practice. He paused, something flickering across his face, memory perhaps. When you live alone, you learn quickly or you die. There was weight in those words, a history I did not yet know. The rabbit required preparation. I had known this intellectually. One did not simply consume game whole. But watching Kieran set about the task with practiced efficiency, skinning, cleaning, preparing the meat for roasting over the fire, made the reality rather more visceral than the theory. I tried not to look away, tried to watch with the same detached interest I would have given to any educational demonstration. I failed rather spectacularly. You have never seen game prepared, he observed, not looking up from his work. The palace kitchens were rather removed from the dining room. One's meals simply appeared fully cooked and artfully arranged on china plates. I swallowed against unexpected nausea. I confess I never gave much thought to what occurred between the hunt and the table. That luxury has ended. I am aware. I straightened my spine, forced myself to watch properly. Teach me, I shall learn. He glanced at me then, something like approval flickering in his amber eyes. Very well, but you will not enjoy it. He was correct, I did not enjoy it. But I learned. He showed me how to make the initial cuts, how to separate skin from flesh without damaging either. How to locate and remove the organs, some edible, some not. How to prepare the meat for cooking, trimming away fat and sinew. His hands were steady, efficient. There was no waste in his movements, no hesitation. This was survival, pure and practical, stripped of all the courtly pretense I had grown up with. "You are doing well," he said, when I managed not to look away during a particularly unpleasant portion of the process. "I am trying not to cast up my accounts on your boots. That is also doing well, given the circumstances." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. As the rabbit roasted over the fire, secured on a makeshift spit Kieran had fashioned from green wood, the smell gradually shifted from something raw and disturbing to something genuinely appetizing. My stomach, which had been protesting moments before, suddenly reminded me that I had not eaten properly in days. "How long?" I asked. "Another quarter hour, perhaps less." He settled beside me, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. "Tell me something." "About what?" "Anything. You are usually quite talkative. This silence is disconcerting." I considered what I wished to share. There was so much I could say, about the palace, about my life before, about the 100 small indignities and larger cruelties that had shaped me. Instead, I asked the question that had been gathering in my mind. "Tell me about your childhood," I said softly. "Before all of this, before my father, before the running, what was it like?" Kieran went very still beside me. The firelight played across his features, casting shadows that made his expression difficult to read. "Why do you wish to know?" "Because you know everything about me, who I am, where I come from, what I am fleeing, but I know almost nothing of you, only that you are a werewolf, that my father imprisoned you, that you have been alone for a very long time." I turned to face him more fully. "I would like to know you, if you are willing to share." He was quiet for so long I thought he might refuse. His gaze remained fixed on the fire, watching the flames dance and twist. Then slowly, he began to speak. "I was born in the northern forests. The thornwood, we called it, old growth, deep and dark and wild. My pack lived there, had lived there for generations." His voice was carefully neutral, as though reciting facts rather than memories. 43 wolves in total, not large as packs go, but strong, stable. "You said was." "They are all dead now." The words were matter of fact, but I heard the pain beneath them. "What happened?" "I was 8 years old. There was a stream, excellent fishing, perhaps half a mile from our den. I was meant to stay near the pack that day, but I was 8 and I thought myself quite grown enough to disobey." He paused, jaw tightening. "When I returned, they were all dead. Another pack had challenged for territory. Our alpha had refused to yield, so they killed everyone, even the children." My breath caught. "Kieran." "I hid in the forest for 3 days, did not eat, did not shift, simply existed." He finally looked at me, his amber eyes distant with memory. "On the 4th day, I started walking. South, because south seemed as good a direction as any. I have been walking ever since. It's been 18 years. 18 years, I whispered. "You have been alone for 18 years. "Yes." "But wolves are pack animals, are they not? You need." "We need pack the way humans need air," he interrupted, his voice going rough. "Being alone goes against every instinct, every biological imperative. It is like," he struggled for words, "like suffocating slowly. Every day, every hour, your wolf screams for packmates, for belonging, for connection. And every day, you deny it, because the alternative is forming attachments that will only be ripped away again." The weight of those words settled between us. We sat in silence for a moment, hands still joined, the fire crackling between us and the wider world. "The young werewolf I saw executed," I said carefully. "The one in my nightmares, dark hair, amber eyes, a scar here," I touched my cheekbone. Did you know him?" Kieran's expression shuddered. "No, I traveled alone, avoided other wolves deliberately. Whoever he was, whatever pack he belonged to, I never met him." "I am sorry, I thought perhaps that I might know every werewolf in the kingdom. We are not so numerous as that." His tone was not unkind, merely factual. The rabbit was ready. Kieran pulled it from the fire, divided it carefully, the larger portion for me, I noticed, despite his body's greater need for sustenance. You require more, I protested. You are still recovering from poisoning. You require strength for the journey ahead. Eat. We compromised, splitting it more evenly, though he still ensured I had slightly more. The meat was tougher than palace fare, gamey and strong-flavored. But it was warm and nourishing, and my stomach, accustomed to delicate cuisine, accepted it with only minor protest. We ate in silence, the simple act of shared sustenance creating its own intimacy. I watched the way Kieran ate, efficient, focused, no wasted movement. The way he occasionally glanced toward the cave entrance, ever vigilant. The way his shoulders had relaxed slightly since yesterday, the worst of the silver poisoning finally working its way through his system. We must move soon, he said when we had finished, wiping his hands clean on a handful of leaves. The hunting party will not have abandoned the search. How far must we travel? North, into the mountains. There are places there where even your father's hunters will not venture. How many days? A week, perhaps longer, given. He gestured vaguely at my feet. I looked down. Even wrapped in Kieran's careful bandaging, I could feel the damage. The herbs had helped tremendously, the infection was receding, the pain more manageable. But I was hardly fit for a week's hard travel through mountain terrain. I shall manage, I said, lifting my chin. I do not doubt your determination, only your stamina. He stood, began gathering our meager supplies. We shall take it slowly. Rest when needed. I can hunt as we go, so we need not carry excessive food stores. Kieran. Sera, he turned to face me fully. I know you wish to prove your capability, but there is no shame in acknowledging limitations. We go only as fast as your feet will allow. That is practical, not weak. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I could keep whatever pace he set. But Helena's voice echoed in my memory. Pride is only useful when it does not get you killed, child. Very well, I conceded. We go at whatever pace makes sense. Something that might have been relief flickered across his face. Good, now let me check those bandages before we depart. As we prepared to depart, Kieran knelt before me to examine my feet. His hands were careful, gentle despite their obvious strength. The same hands that had torn apart silver chains, that had killed to protect me, that could shift into claws capable of rending flesh. He unwrapped the bandages slowly, his touch feather-light. The infection is receding, he said, examining the wounds with clinical precision. You are fortunate. I am fortunate in many things. I watched the top of his head, the way sunlight filtering into the cave caught hints of bronze in his dark hair. You found herbs, you knew how to treat the wounds. I hesitated, then pushed forward. You did not leave me behind when you easily could have. He looked up at me then, and something passed between us. A recognition, perhaps. An acknowledgement of the fragile alliance we had formed, of the tentative trust growing between us despite his best efforts to prevent it. I am beginning to believe, he said slowly, his hands still cradling my foot with surprising tenderness, that leaving you behind would be rather more difficult than I had anticipated. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Before I could respond, before I could examine too closely what his words meant, what my reaction to them meant, a sound reached us from outside the cave. Distant but unmistakable. Dogs baying. Kieran's head snapped up, his entire body going rigid with alertness. In one smooth motion, he was on his feet, moving to the cave entrance. They have found our trail, he said, voice tight with controlled urgency. We must go now. I scrambled to stand, ignoring the protest from my feet. How close? Close enough, we have perhaps an hour's lead, maybe less. He was already moving, gathering what little we had, his movements quick and efficient. Can you run? I thought of my feet, tender, barely healed, wrapped in makeshift bandages. Thought of the infection that had only just begun to recede. Thought of a week's journey compressed into desperate flight. Yes, I said. Because what choice remained? Kieran turned to look at me, his amber eyes searching my face for something. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then we run. He crossed to me in 2 long strides, began rewrapping my feet with quick, practiced movements. The bandages were tighter this time, more secure, protection against what was to come. "There is a river," he said as he worked. "Perhaps 2 hours north. If we can reach it, cross it, the water will hide our scent. Give us time to lose them properly." 2 hours is a long time to run. Then we had best not waste time discussing it. He finished with my feet, stood. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, wolf and woman, fugitive and princess, 2 broken people bound by circumstance and choice, and something neither of us was quite ready to name. Then Kieran's expression shifted, became something fierce and protective and utterly certain. "Stay close to me," he said. "No matter what happens, stay close." Behind us, the baying of dogs grew steadily louder. Ahead, the mountains rose dark and endless against the morning sky. We ran. And as my feet pounded against earth, as branches tore at my dress and my lungs burned with effort, I thought about what Kieran had said.
Chapter 7. We had been running for perhaps 3 hours when I realized we would not make it to the river before they caught us. The wind carried their scent, horses, dogs, men, perhaps a dozen in total, moving faster than I had anticipated. They had picked up our trail at the cave, followed it with the dogged determination of hounds who scented blood. Sera was flagging badly, though she would doubtless deny it with her last breath. I could smell fresh blood from her feet. The wounds had reopened despite the bandages. Her breathing had grown labored, each breath coming shorter and more ragged than the last. But she did not complain, did not ask for rest, simply kept running, one foot in front of the other, jaw set with grim determination. "Stubborn, impossible woman. I cannot go much further," she admitted finally, and the confession clearly cost her pride. "I am slowing you down, you should. We have established that I am not leaving you behind." I pulled her to a halt, listening intently to the sounds of pursuit. "Do not waste breath arguing." The storm I had scented earlier was nearly upon us. Dark clouds massed on the horizon, heavy with rain. The wind had shifted, carrying the sharp ozone smell of lightning. It would break within the hour. Rain would hide our trail, wash away the scent the dogs were following, but it would also make travel more treacherous, and Sera was already at the limit of her endurance. I needed to shift, carry her. It was the only way we would reach the river before the hunters closed the distance. "I need to transform," I said, already moving behind a copse of trees. "Carry you." Her eyes widened. "In daylight, if they see." "They are close enough to see us regardless, at least this way we might outpace them." I began unlacing my shirt, my movements quick and efficient. "The river is perhaps 2 hours north. Once we cross, the water will hide our scent. Give us time to lose them properly." "And if we do not make it to the river?" "Then we fight, but I would prefer to avoid that outcome if possible." She nodded, turning away to give me privacy. Even now, even fleeing for our lives, she observed the proprieties. It would have been amusing if the situation were not so dire. I stripped quickly, draping my clothing over a low branch where I could retrieve it later if fortune favored us. The change came easier than it had in the cave. The silver had burned through enough that my body no longer fought the shift quite so violently. I closed my eyes, reached for the wolf that lived beneath my skin. For 18 years this had been my truest self, the form in which I was strongest, fastest, most alive. The human shape was useful for certain things, but the wolf was home. The transformation rippled through me, bone reshaping, muscles reforming, senses sharpening to crystal clarity. It hurt, it always hurt, that was the nature of the change, but it was a familiar pain, almost welcome in its intensity. When I emerged from behind the trees on 4 legs, Sera stood waiting. Her expression was a mixture of awe and apprehension, the same look she had worn the first time she had watched me shift. I would never tire of seeing wonder in her eyes when she looked at me like this. I lowered myself to the ground, an invitation. She climbed onto my back with only slight hesitation now, her fingers winding into my fur with growing familiarity. She had done this before, knew how to balance, how to grip without pulling painfully at my coat. "If you drop me," she murmured, settling into position, "I shall be extremely cross with you." I huffed wolf laughter and felt her relax slightly against my neck. Then I ran. The forest blurred around us as I found my stride. This was what I was built for: speed, endurance, the wild joy of muscles working in perfect harmony. My wolf reveled in it, in the wind and the scent of rain and the feel of earth beneath my paws. Behind us I could hear the hunting party, closer than before but not close enough, not yet. I pushed harder, leaping over fallen logs, weaving between trees with inches to spare. Sera clung tightly, her weight barely noticeable, her breathing steady against my neck. She trusted me completely. I could feel it in the way she moved with my rhythm rather than fighting against it. The terrain grew rougher as we climbed into the foothills. Rocks jutted from the earth, roots threatened to trip the unwary, and the ground sloped steeply upward. But I knew these mountains from my wandering years, knew where the paths led, where the ground was firm, where dangers lurked. Thunder rumbled overhead. The first drops of rain began to fall, fat and cold, striking my fur with increasing frequency. The storm was breaking. The rain came suddenly, as mountain storms often do. One moment, scattered drops. The next, a deluge that reduced visibility to mere yards and turned the forest floor to mud. Sera pressed lower against my neck, trying to shield her face from the worst of it. Within moments, we were both soaked through. I could feel her shivering, her fingers gripping my fur with desperate strength. The terrain grew treacherous, mud slick beneath my paws, visibility nearly gone, the scent of the hunting party washed away by the downpour, but our own scent disappearing as well. A blessing and a curse. They could not track us easily now, but neither could I navigate with my usual certainty. I slowed, picking my way more carefully through the storm. One misstep and we would both tumble down the mountainside. Sera needed me alive, needed me capable. Then through the rain, I spotted it. A structure small, barely visible through the downpour. A hunter's cabin, if I was not mistaken. Abandoned from the look of it, with the door hanging loose on rusted hinges. Shelter. I made for it without hesitation, my paws slipping on mud and wet stone. Sera held on grimly, not speaking, barely breathing, simply trusting me to get us there safely. The cabin was small, a single room with a stone fireplace, rough wooden floor, and evidence of long disuse. Cobwebs hung in corners, dust covered every surface, but it was dry and it was hidden, and it would have to be enough. I pushed through the door, nearly stumbling as exhaustion finally caught up with me. The silver poisoning, the running, the transformation, all of it had taken its toll. Sera slid off my back immediately, her own legs nearly giving out when they took her weight. "Kieran," her voice was worried, "are you all right?" I shifted back, ignoring the wave of dizziness that accompanied the change. The transformation back to human form always left me vulnerable for a few moments, muscles remembering their new configuration, senses adjusting to lesser acuity. When I could speak again, I said simply, "We made it." "Yes," she wrapped her arms around herself, shivering violently. "We did." I looked at her properly for the first time since entering the cabin. She was soaked to the skin, her dress heavy with water, her hair plastered to her face and neck. Her lips had taken on a faint blue tinge. Hypothermia, the realization hit me with cold certainty. "Your dress," I said, not looking at her directly. "You must remove it. The fabric is heavy with water. It will drain your warmth." She hesitated, her arms tightening around herself. "I cannot reach the fastenings." Of course she could not. Ladies' garments era required assistance, a maid to help with the endless buttons and laces that held propriety in place. I moved behind her, keeping my eyes fixed firmly on the practical matter at hand, rather than the implications of what I was doing. The buttons were small, numerous, made slippery by rain. My hands trembled as I worked, from cold, I told myself. Only cold, not from the awareness of pale skin revealed inch by inch, not from the scent of her, so close, wet fabric and woman, and something uniquely Sera. "There," I said when the final lace was loosened, my voice rougher than I had intended. You have your chemise still, that should suffice for modesty." She slipped the heavy dress off, and even keeping my gaze carefully averted, I was acutely aware of her standing there in nothing but thin, soaked undergarments that clung to every curve. I turned away quickly, moving to the fireplace. I shall build a fire. My own nakedness seemed suddenly, absurdly relevant. I had grown so accustomed to shifting between forms that I often forgot humans found nudity uncomfortable. but Sira was not a wolf. She was a lady, raised with strict notions of propriety, and I was. Kieran, her voice was quiet, your trousers from the tree before you shifted. Do you think they survived the rain? I had forgotten them entirely in the rush to reach shelter. Unlikely, and I cannot go back for them now. Oh, a pause. Well, I suppose we are both rather indecent at the moment. Despite everything, I almost smiled, indeed. The wood stored beside the fireplace was old but dry, protected from the elements by the cabin's structure. I coaxed a flame to life with hands that still trembled, feeding the infant fire with kindling until it grew strong enough to accept larger pieces. Heat began to spread through the small space, not much, but enough. Sira had wrapped herself in her cloak, also wet, but better than nothing. She stood as close to the fire as she dared, still shivering violently, her arms wrapped around herself. I focused very intently on arranging firewood, on building up the flames, on anything except the way her chemise clung to her body, leaving very little to imagination. Kieran, her voice was small, uncertain. I am very cold. I knew what she was asking, knew also that it violated every rule of decent behavior, every propriety she had been raised to observe. But propriety would not keep her from freezing. Come here, I said, settling against the wall nearest the fire. She hesitated only a moment before moving to sit beside me, close enough that I could feel the chill radiating from her skin. It was not enough. She continued to shiver, her teeth chattering audibly. Closer, I said roughly, hating the necessity even as I acknowledged it. I run hot wolf constitution. You need body heat. She shifted until she was pressed fully against my side, tucking herself under my arm. I pulled her closer still until she was nearly in my lap, her head tucked beneath my chin, my arms wrapped around her trembling form. Her skin was ice cold against mine. I could feel every shiver that racked her body, feel the rapid flutter of her heartbeat against my chest. Gradually, slowly, the shivering began to ease. I needed to think of something other than the woman in my arms, other than the scent of her, the softness of her, the way she fit against me as though she belonged there. Tell me of your brother, I said, because I needed words between us, needed the distraction of conversation. Adrian, you speak of him often, but tell me little of substance. She stirred against me, tilting her head slightly to look up. What do you wish to know? Everything, anything, simply talk to me, Sira. She settled back against my chest, her voice soft. Adrian is the best of us, genuinely kind, despite our father's best efforts to crush it out of him. He is only 18, but he has more wisdom than men twice his age. You love him very much. He is the only family I have ever truly had. My mother died when I was 3, I barely remember her. My father remarried within the year to Queen Vivienne, who has always resented my existence. She paused. Vivienne is Adrian's mother. We share only our father, no blood of the mother. Yet Adrian has been more truly my family than anyone save Helena. The woman who raised you. Yes, she was my mother's maid originally. When my mother died, Helena stayed on to care for me. She taught me everything that mattered, how to read people, how to defend myself, how to appear docile while planning 7 different escape routes. A soft laugh, how to pick locks. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. An unusual education for a princess. She said a lady should know how to extricate herself from any situation. I thought she spoke of political entanglements. I was mistaken. Or perhaps she knew precisely what she was teaching you. Perhaps. Sira shifted slightly, her hand coming to rest over my heart. The gesture was unconscious, I thought, but it made something in my chest tighten nonetheless. Helena knew, I think, that my father's court was dangerous, that I would need every advantage to survive it. Your stepmother, I said carefully, Queen Vivienne, she is the reason you were being married to Dorian. She arranged it, yes, or rather, she convinced my father it was necessary. Dorian Blackwell is her nephew, her sister's son. The marriage would have strengthened certain political alliances, secured certain loyalties. Her voice went flat, and conveniently removed me from court, from any position where I might threaten Adrian's eventual claim to the throne. You would never threaten your brother. No, but Vivienne does not see it that way. She sees me as competition, as a reminder that she was not my father's first choice, that her son is not his firstborn. A sigh. Family politics are exhausting. I would not know. My pack was slaughtered before such complications could develop. The words came out more bitter than I had intended. Sarah went very still against me. I am sorry, she said quietly. That was thoughtless of me, complaining about complicated family relationships to someone who. Do not, I tightened my arms around her slightly. Do not apologize for having what I lost. That is not how grief works. We sat in silence for a moment, the fire crackling, rain hammering against the cabin's roof. Tell me about your mother, I said finally. You said she died when you were 3. Do you remember anything of her? Very little, impressions more than memories. She had dark hair, I think, and she sang, I remember that, lullabies in a language I did not understand. Sierra's voice grew softer. Helena told me once that my mother was kind, gentle, that she loved my father despite his flaws, believed she could soften his harder edges. Could she? I do not know, she died too soon for me to see. A pause, though I have often wondered. Wondered what? If there was more to it, my father does not speak of her, ever, and when I was younger, when I asked Helena about her, she would get this look, like she wanted to tell me something but could not. I filed that away, some instinct telling me it mattered, but before I could pursue it further, Sierra changed the subject. Your turn, she said. Tell me something I do not know about you. You know very little about me. The field is rather broad. Then tell me something small, something. What did you enjoy doing? What brought you joy? I thought back to those early years before the slaughter, before the running, when I had been simply a child in a loving pack rather than a lone wolf surviving on spite and skill. Swimming, I said finally. There was a lake near our territory, deep and cold and crystal clear. In summer, we would spend hours there, the young wolves, I mean. We would race each other, see who could hold their breath longest, dive for stones at the bottom. That sounds wonderful. It was. I was particularly good at it, actually. Fast swimmer, could hold my breath longer than most. Despite the years, despite the loss, I found myself smiling at the memory. There was this one outcropping, a cliff that jutted over the deepest part of the lake, perhaps 20 feet high. The older wolves would dare each other to jump from it. Did you? Eventually, when I was 7, terrified the entire climb up, but I did it. The memory was surprisingly clear, the rough stone under my hands, the way my heart had pounded, the moment of weightlessness before hitting the water. My mother was furious, said I could have broken my neck, but my father, I stopped, throat tightening unexpectedly. What did your father do? He laughed, told my mother I was a wolf, not a porcelain doll, that wolves were meant to take risks, test their limits. I could almost hear his voice, rough and fond. Then he jumped in after me, showed me how to dive properly, how to enter the water cleanly, spent the whole afternoon teaching me. Sierra's hand moved on my chest, a gentle pressure. He sounds like he was a good father. He was hard sometimes, but fair. He loved us, my mother and me, loved his pack. The old grief rose up, familiar and bitter. Not that it mattered in the end, love did not save them. No, Sierra agreed softly, but it meant something while they lived, that matters. We fell silent again. The rain continued its assault on the cabin. Thunder rumbled overhead, closer now. And I became increasingly aware of every point where we touched, the curve of her against my side, the softness of her skin beneath my palm where my hand rested at her waist, the way she fit against me as though she belonged there, as though my body had been designed specifically to hold hers. This was dangerous, more dangerous than silver, than hunters, than any physical threat. Sierra, I began, though I knew not what I intended to say. She tilted her head to look up at me, and our faces were suddenly very close, close enough that I could count the flecks of gold in her green eyes, close enough that I could feel her breath against my lips. Yes, her voice was barely a whisper. Her lips were slightly parted, her eyes wide, dark in the firelight. I could hear her heartbeat accelerating, matching the sudden racing of my own. I was going to kiss her, despite every reason I should not. I was going to kiss her. A sound outside, voices, distant but approaching. We sprang apart like guilty children. I moved to the window, careful to stay hidden, and looked out through gaps in the weathered wood. Men, perhaps a dozen of them, leading horses, moving through the rain toward a clearing perhaps 50 yards from the cabin. The hunting party, I said quietly, my voice tight with controlled urgency. They have taken shelter nearby. Sierra moved to join me at the window, wrapped in her cloak, her hair still damp and tangled. Can they smell us? No, we are here. Not in this rain, the downpour will mask our scent completely. but we cannot leave until they do. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. How long do you think they will wait? Until the storm passes, morning most likely. That is hours away. Yes. We looked at each other in the dim firelight. The implications hung between us, heavy and undeniable. We would be here together, alone, for hours, with nothing but wet undergarments and a dying fire between us in complete impropriety. I moved away from the window, began to pace the small cabin like a caged animal. This was impossible, unworkable. I needed distance, needed space, needed anything except the forced intimacy of being trapped in close quarters with her while my body still hummed with frustrated wanting. We should rest, I said, not looking at her. Conserve our strength. When the storm passes, we will need to move quickly. All right, her voice was carefully neutral. Should I? Where should I? There was only one sleeping platform in the cabin, a rough wooden frame built against the far wall, empty of any mattress or bedding. The floor was hard-packed dirt, cold and uncomfortable. The platform, I said, you take it. I shall keep watch by the fire. Kieran, you need rest as much as I do. More, perhaps. You are still recovering from the silver. I shall manage. That is not an answer. I turned to face her, frustrated. What would you have me do, Sira? Lie beside you, pretend that I am unaffected by your proximity, that I did not nearly kiss you moments ago. The words escaped before I could stop them. She stared at me, eyes wide. You were going to kiss me. Yes. Why did you not? Because I stopped, struggling for words. Because you deserve better than a broken man who will likely get you killed. Should that not be my decision to make? Perhaps, but I am trying to protect you, even if that means protecting you from me. She crossed the small space between us, stopping directly in front of me, close enough to touch, though she did not. I do not need protection from you, Kieran. She stopped, took a breath. I need you to stop treating me like I am made of glass. I am not fragile. I am not a child, and I am perfectly capable of deciding what risks I wish to take. Zero. Do you want me? The question was direct, unflinching. Be honest, do you want me? The truth clawed its way out of my throat. Yes, God help me, yes. I have wanted you since the moment you walked into that dungeon with lockpicks and impossible determination. I have wanted you every moment since. Then why? Because wanting is not enough. The words came out harsher than I intended. Because everyone I have ever cared for has died. Because forming attachments is a luxury lone wolves cannot afford. Because... I stopped breathing hard, the admission finally surfacing. Because I am terrified. The confession hung between us. I had never said it aloud before, had barely acknowledged it to myself. But there it was, raw and honest and utterly pathetic. I am terrified too, Sira said softly, of my father, of the future, of what happens if we are caught, but I am more afraid of never taking the chance at all. She reached out, took my hand. Her fingers were small and delicate against mine, but her grip was firm. You do not have to decide anything tonight, she said. You do not have to make promises or commitments or declarations, but you also do not have to keep punishing yourself for being alive. That is not honor, Kieran, that is just suffering. I looked down at our joined hands, hers pale and fine, mine scarred and calloused. They should not fit together. She was a princess, raised in luxury and refinement. I was a wolf, raised in wilderness and blood. And yet, come, she said gently, tugging me toward the sleeping platform. Rest, just rest. I should have refused, should have maintained my distance, kept to my principles. Instead, I let her lead me to the platform, let her settle beside me, her back to my chest, my arm draped carefully over her waist. Is this all right? She asked. Yes, I managed. It was more than all right. It was perfect and terrifying and completely unsustainable. Outside, rain continued to fall. Thunder rumbled. Lightning occasionally lit the cabin's interior with brief, stark illumination.
Chapter 8. I lay very still, acutely aware of every point where Kieran's body touched mine. His arm across my waist, heavy and warm. His chest against my back, rising and falling with each breath. His legs tucked behind mine, our bodies fitted together like pieces of a puzzle I had not known existed. The cabin was dark save for the dying embers of the fire, casting barely enough light to see by. But earlier, when the flames had been higher, when he had knelt by the hearth building up the blaze, I had seen him clearly. Every inch of him. I should not have looked, should have kept my eyes averted, maintained some semblance of propriety even in our impossible circumstances. But I had looked, had traced the lines of his body with my gaze, broad shoulders, lean waist, the long muscles of his legs. Scars scattered across his skin like a map of violence survived. The way firelight painted him in gold and shadow, turning him into something almost mythical. He was beautiful, devastatingly, impossibly beautiful. The memory alone made heat flood my face now. Thank God for the darkness that hid my blush. Thank God he could not see how thoroughly undone I was by simple proximity. Though perhaps he knew anyway. Perhaps he could smell it on me. Wolves had such keen senses. The thought made me want to die of mortification. His hand shifted slightly at my waist, fingers spreading wider, and I felt the touch like a brand even through the thin fabric of his shirt that I wore. I had never felt like this before, never wanted like this, never ached with the need to turn in his arms, to press myself against him fully, to discover what his lips would feel like against mine. It was improper, scandalous, completely inappropriate. I wanted it desperately. "You are not sleeping." His voice was rough, barely above a whisper against my ear. "Neither are you." "I am keeping watch." "The hunters are settled, you said so yourself. There is nothing to watch for until morning." A pause, then. "I cannot sleep." "Why not?" Another pause, longer this time. I felt his breath ghost across my neck, felt the tension in his body behind me. "Because you are in my arms," he said finally, the admission clearly costing him. "And I am trying very hard to be a gentleman about it." My heart stuttered. What if I do not want you to be a gentleman? The words escaped before I could stop them. Bold, brazen, utterly unlike the proper princess I had been raised to be. But I was not that princess anymore. I had left her behind in the palace with my title and my cage and my father's expectations. Kieran went very still. "Sira." "I know what I am saying." I turned in his arms, twisting to face him. The movement brought us even closer together, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "I know this is improper. I know we should not, that I should not, but I do not care. For the first time in my life, I want something for myself. I want." "What do you want?" His voice had gone low, almost a growl. "You." The word hung between us in the darkness. I could not see his face clearly, only the glint of his eyes catching what little light remained from the embers. But I felt the shudder that went through him, felt his hand tighten at my waist. "You do not know what you are asking." "I know exactly what I am asking." "Sira, I am trying to protect you." "From what?" I reached up, found his face in the darkness, and cupped his jaw with one hand. "I have spent 21 years being told what I should want, who I should be, what choices I am permitted to make. I am done with that. I choose this. I choose you." "This is not, we cannot." He struggled for words, his breath coming faster. "If we do this, if we cross this line, there is no going back." "Good, I do not want to go back." "Your reputation is already ruined. I fled my father's house. I travel alone with a man. I am beyond redemption in the eyes of polite society." I moved closer still, until our foreheads nearly touched. "The only opinion I care about is yours, and if you do not want this, if you do not want me, then say so plainly and I shall stop throwing myself at you in this mortifying fashion." "Not want you?" The words came out strangled. "Sira, I have wanted you since the moment you walked into that dungeon. I have wanted you every moment since. Wanting you is not the question." "Then what is?" "Whether I have the right to take what I want, whether keeping you close is protection or selfishness." I understood then. It was not about propriety or reputation. It was about his fear of attachment, his terror of caring for someone and losing them. "Kieran," I said softly, "look at me." I could barely see him in the darkness, but I felt his gaze on my face. "I am not asking for forever. I am not asking for promises you cannot make." I took a breath. "I am asking for now, for this moment, for the choice to be close to you while we still can be. Because tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that, we might be caught. We might die. And if we do, I do not want to die without knowing what this feels like. What feels like? This, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. For a heartbeat, he was frozen, shocked, perhaps, or struggling with himself. Then he kissed me back. It was not gentle, not tentative. It was desperate and claiming, and full of weeks of restrained wanting finally unleashed. His hand tangled in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss. His other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against him until no space remained between us. I could feel every line of his body against mine, could feel the evidence of his want pressing against my hip. I should have been scandalized. Instead, I felt powerful, desired, alive in a way I had never been before. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Sira," he managed, his voice wrecked. "We should stop, if we do not stop now." "I do not want to stop." "You do not understand what you are asking." "I understand perfectly." I kissed him again, softer this time. "I understand that I want you, that I trust you, that I am tired of being afraid of wanting things. If someone discovers, if your reputation is already destroyed, we have established this." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Please, Kieran, stop trying to protect me from my own choices. I am asking you to make love to me. If you do not want that, say so. But do not refuse me because you think you are protecting me." He looked at me for a long moment, something warring in his expression. Then, roughly, "I want it. God help me, I want it more than I have wanted anything in 18 years. Then have it, have me." His mouth crashed into mine again, all restraint abandoned. We moved together with desperate urgency, hands exploring, bodies pressing close. But we could not go further. Because outside, barely muffled by the cabin's thin walls, voices continued their steady conversation. The hunters, still awake, still close enough to hear any significant sound. We had to remain quiet, had to remain still, could only kiss and touch and want with aching intensity while the world outside prevented anything more. It was exquisite torture. "When we are safe," Kieran breathed against my lips. "When we are somewhere private, somewhere we need not fear discovery." "Yes," I whispered, "yes." We kissed again, slower now, savoring rather than devouring. Learning the shape and taste of each other, memorizing this moment against whatever future awaited us. Eventually, exhaustion claimed us both. We fell asleep tangled together, Kieran's arms around me, my face pressed against his chest, the promise of more hanging between us like a thread of gold in darkness. I woke to gray morning light and the sound of rain, gentler now, a steady patter rather than yesterday's deluge. And to voices outside the cabin, close, too close. My eyes flew open. Kieran was already awake, rigid with tension, his hand covering my mouth before I could speak. He pressed his lips to my ear. "Wolves, 2 of them, they are circling the cabin." My heart hammered. Not the hunters. The voices were wrong, the cadence different. But wolves could be just as dangerous if they were hostile. Kieran moved with careful silence, pulling away from me, rising from the sleeping platform. In the gray morning light, I could see him fully now, all lean muscle and predatory grace, utterly unconcerned with his nakedness as he moved to the window. I looked away quickly, heat flooding my face despite everything we had shared last night. "Stay here," he mouthed. Then he opened the door and stepped outside. I moved to the window, watching through gaps in the weathered wood. 2 wolves stood in the clearing, one silver-gray, the other golden. Both large, healthy, watching the cabin with obvious intelligence. Kieran stood very still, making no threatening moves. Then, slowly, deliberately, he shifted. The transformation was fluid, practiced. A massive dark wolf stood where the man had been. The 3 wolves regarded each other for a long moment. Then the silver wolf shifted. A woman stood there, young, perhaps my age, with hair the color of spun silver that fell past her shoulders. She was as unconcerned with nudity as Kieran had been. "Forgive the intrusion," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "I am Myra Thornhart, This is my brother, Declan. The golden wolf shifted as well. A man, perhaps slightly younger than Myra, with bright gold hair. We caught your scent yesterday, Myra continued, and we wondered if you might be willing to speak with us. Kieran remained in wolf form, wary. We mean no harm, Declan added. We have been alone for a long time, and when we heard that another lone wolf was traveling through these mountains, we hoped you might not wish to be alone any longer either. Kieran shifted back to human form, stood there, clearly weighing options. I am not alone, he said. I travel with a companion. The human woman, yes, we saw her through the window. Myra's expression remained neutral. Is she your mate? I could not see Kieran's face from my angle, but I saw his shoulders stiffen. She is under my protection. Of course, Myra took a careful step forward. We do not mean to intrude, our pack was slaughtered 8 months past. Hunters, we have been wandering since, searching for purpose, for belonging. We heard of your escape from the king's dungeons, Declan said, and we thought perhaps we might travel together. Temporarily, we could help protect your companion, help hunt and scout. The silence stretched. I made a decision. I stepped out of the cabin, still wearing only Kieran's shirt over my chemise, my wet dress bundled in my arms. All 3 wolves turned to look at me. I kept my chin high, refusing to show embarrassment despite my state of undress, despite the obvious intimacy of the situation. Forgive me, I said. I could not help but overhear. I am Seraphina, Sera. Myra's eyes widened. You are the princess. Now I am simply Sera. I moved to stand beside Kieran deliberately. Your offer is generous. We would welcome companions if Kieran is willing. Kieran looked at me, something complicated in his expression. You need not do this alone, I tried to convey. Let them help. 2 days, Kieran said finally. We travel together for 2 days. Then, if I wish you gone, you leave. No argument. Agreed, Myra said. However, Declan said, a smile tugging at his lips, we should perhaps address the immediate situation before making travel plans. What situation? Kieran asked. The fact that you have no clothes and your companion is dressed in your shirt and little else. Declan gestured to a pack lying near the edge of the clearing. We have spare garments, not perfectly fitted perhaps, but serviceable. For the first time since I had met him, Kieran looked distinctly uncomfortable. That would be appreciated, he said stiffly. Myra smiled warmly at me. I believe I have a traveling dress that might suit you, and proper undergarments. Come, let us leave the men to sort themselves while we address more practical matters. She shifted briefly to wolf form, grabbed her pack in her jaws, then shifted back and led me around the side of the cabin. I apologize for the circumstances of our meeting, I said as Myra pulled clothing from her pack. I am not usually. You are traveling through wilderness, fleeing for your life, and making do with what resources you have. Myra held up a simple wool dress, deep blue, practical cut. There is no shame in that. Thank you. She turned her back, giving me privacy to change. I peeled off Kieran's shirt, which still smelled of him, of forest and smoke, and the damp chemise beneath. The dry undergarments Myra provided were a blessing, as was the dress, which fit reasonably well despite her being slightly taller than I. There, Myra said when I was decent. Much better, you shall freeze otherwise. You are very kind. Kindness costs nothing, she studied me thoughtfully. May I ask you something personal? You may ask, I cannot promise I shall answer. Fair enough, she paused. Are you here by choice? Traveling with Kieran, I mean, you are not his prisoner. I understood the question for what it was, ensuring I was not being held against my will. I am here by choice, entirely by choice. I met her gaze steadily. I freed him from my father's dungeon. I chose to flee with him. I choose to stay with him. Everything has been my decision. Something in her expression softened. Good, I needed to hear that. Too many human women end up with wolves against their will. I needed to know you were not one of them. I am not. If anything, Kieran has tried repeatedly to convince me to leave him, to return home to find safety elsewhere. I smiled slightly. I have refused every time. Why? The question was simple. The answer was not. Because home was a cage, I said finally. Beautiful, comfortable, but a cage nonetheless. And I paused, searching for words. He makes me feel free, seen, like I am more than just a title or a pawn in someone else's game. Myra smiled. You love him. It was not a question. Yes, I admitted. Though I have not told him yet, I am not certain he is ready to hear it. He loves you too. It is written all over him when he looks at you. He is fighting it. Of course he is. Lone wolves always do. She touched my arm gently. But he will lose that fight eventually. The heart wants what it wants, regardless of how much we try to deny it. We rounded the cabin to find Kieran now dressed in borrowed trousers and a shirt that was slightly too loose across his shoulders. Declan was similarly dressed, the two of them standing in awkward silence. Well, Declan said brightly when he saw us. Now that we are all decent, shall we discuss practical matters, such as where we are going and how to avoid the hunting party that is undoubtedly still searching for you? East, Kieran said. There is a river ford perhaps 3 hours from here. We cross there, head into the higher mountains where the hunters will not follow. We know these mountains somewhat, Myra offered. We have been wandering them for months. There are good defensible positions, caves for shelter, game for hunting. Then lead the way, I said. The sooner we put distance between ourselves and this place, the better I shall feel. We set out together, 4 instead of 2. Myra and Declan took the lead, occasionally shifting to wolf form to scout ahead, then shifting back to report what they had found. Kieran and I followed at a pace, suited to my still healing feet. Are you all right? He asked quietly as we walked. With them joining us, I mean, I should have consulted you before agreeing. I am more than all right. We need allies, Kieran, and they seem genuine. They do, he admitted, but I have been burned before by trusting too quickly. Then we shall be cautious, but not so cautious that we reject help when it is offered. He nodded, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. 18 years alone had made him wary of pack bonds, of connections that might lead to loss. But he was trying, that was what mattered. We walked in silence for a while. Then, tentatively, his hand found mine, laced our fingers together. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental. Ahead, I saw Myra glance back, saw her smile when she noticed our joined hands. You are staring, I heard Declan say to his sister. I am observing, she corrected. There is a difference. You are a romantic. And you are a cynic. I prefer realist. Their bickering was oddly comforting, familiar, the sound of siblings who knew each other so well they could argue without malice. I found myself smiling. What amuses you? Kieran asked. Them, us, the absurdity of this entire situation. I squeezed his hand. A week ago, I was a princess preparing for an unwanted marriage. Now I am fleeing through mountains with 3 werewolves, wearing borrowed clothing, and I have never been happier. He looked at me, something soft in his expression. You are extraordinary, do you know that? You have mentioned it before. I shall likely mention it again, frequently. I shall not complain. We continued walking, hand in hand, toward whatever future awaited us. Behind us, the hunting party searched in vain. Ahead, the mountains rose dark and endless. And between us, something fragile and precious and worth fighting for was growing. I did not know what would happen tomorrow, did not know if we would survive the week, the month, the year. But I knew this, I had chosen freedom, had chosen him, had chosen to live rather than merely exist. And that was enough. For now, it was more than enough.
Chapter 9. We had been traveling together for 5 days now. Myra and Declan had proven themselves useful, scouting ahead, hunting game, providing an extra measure of safety that I had not realized we needed until we had it. I had told myself their presence would be temporary, a few days at most until we reached safer territory. Then we would part ways and I would return to what I knew, solitude, vigilance, the careful distance that kept everyone safe from my curse of loss. Yet here we were still together, moving as a unit, making camp as a group, sharing meals and watches and the comfortable silence that came from traveling companions who fit together naturally. It was unsettling and unexpectedly pleasant. Sira had blossomed in their company. She and Myra had formed a swift friendship, two women who understood what it meant to be constrained by circumstances beyond their control. I often found them walking together, speaking in low voices, occasionally laughing at some shared confidence. Declan had appointed himself Sira's informal guardian when I could not be near, watching her back during river crossings, offering a steadying hand on difficult terrain, treating her with the easy courtesy of a brother, rather than the predatory interest some males showed toward attractive human women. I should have been grateful. Instead, I found myself irrationally irritated every time Declan made her laugh, every time Myra braided Sira's hair, every time they shared some moment I was not part of. My wolf did not like sharing, did not like others having claim to her attention, her smiles, her trust. Mine, it growled, ours, send them away. I ignored it. We needed allies. Sira needed friends. My possessive instincts were irrelevant. The village. We require supplies, Myra announced on the morning of the 6th day. Proper bandages for Sira's feet, herbs for healing work, food beyond what we can hunt. The village of Thornwell is perhaps 2 hours south, small enough to avoid notice, large enough to have a proper market. I considered this, Thornwell, I knew it slightly, a farming community, insular but not hostile to strangers who kept to themselves. We should split up, I said, draw less attention. 4 travelers together invite questions. Pairs are more easily dismissed. Sira and I shall see to clothing and medical supplies, Myra offered. You and Declan can manage the food and camping provisions. It was sensible, practical, the logical division of labor. I hated it. I watched Sira disappear into the market with Myra, her figure swallowed by the crowd of farmers and merchants, and my wolf growled low in my chest. You are staring, Declan observed mildly. I am ensuring her safety. Is that what we are calling it? I turned to glare at him. Do you have a point? Several actually, but the primary one is this. You are utterly besotted with her, she is equally besotted with you, and you are both tiptoeing around it like nervous debutantes at their first ball. That is absurd. Is it? You sleep beside her every night, you adjust your pace to match hers. You touched her arm 47 times yesterday, yes, I counted, and each time you looked as though you wished to do rather more than simply touch her arm. Your imagination runs wild. My observation is accurate. Declan's expression turned more serious. Kieran, I understand caution, I understand fear of attachment after loss, but that woman freed you from a dungeon, has kept pace with you through terrain that would fell trained soldiers, and looks at you as though you hung the moon in the sky. At what point do you permit yourself to want something? I had no answer to that. We moved through the market in silence for a time, purchasing dried meat, flour, salt, other necessities. I paid with coins Sira had brought from the palace, her own money, she had insisted, not stolen, earned through years of careful saving from her allowance. The thought of her planning an escape for years, squirreling away funds and learning lockpicking from her caretaker, made my chest tighten with something uncomfortably close to admiration. No, not close to admiration, pure admiration, she was extraordinary. There, Declan said, nodding toward a fabric stall, I see Myra. And beside her, Sira. My breath caught. She had changed from the borrowed dress Myra had given her into something new. A simple traveling dress, forest green wool, practical cut, with a divided skirt that would allow for easier movement. Her hair had been properly washed and braided simply down her back, the dark waves gleaming in the afternoon sun. She looked less like a princess and more like herself, wild and free and utterly beautiful. Our eyes met across the market square. I should have looked away, should have maintained some semblance of appropriate distance. I did not. She smiled, small, private, meant only for me, and the world narrowed to just that. Her smile, her eyes, the way she moved through the crowd toward us. Breathing would be advisable, Declan murmured, prevents fainting. I ignored him. Sira reached us, Myra at her side carrying parcels. We have had considerable success, bandages, salves, a proper cloak for cold weather. She gestured to the dress, and this. Myra insisted I needed something that would not fall apart after another week of travel. It suits you, I managed. Does it? She turned in a small circle, the divided skirt flaring slightly. I feel rather like I am playing at being someone else, a girl who travels freely rather than one confined to palace walls. You are that girl now, Myra said gently. The palace is behind you. We were preparing to leave the village when the music started. Fiddles and accordions, guitars and drums, the cheerful cacophony of a harvest festival beginning. Paper lanterns were being strung across the village green. Tables laden with food appeared as if by magic. People emerged from homes and shops, dressed in their finest, ready to celebrate the season's bounty. There is to be a harvest festival this evening, Myra said, watching the preparations with obvious longing. Music, dancing, celebration. We should attend. It would allow us to blend in, seem like travelers rather than fugitives. We should move on, I countered immediately. One evening, Sira said softly. When was the last time any of us did something simply because it brought joy rather than aided survival? I could not remember. 18 years since I had danced or celebrated or permitted myself any pleasure that was not strictly necessary for staying alive. It is a risk, I said. Living is a risk, Myra pointed out, and we have been running for days. One evening of normalcy might do us all good. I looked at Sira. She was watching the festival preparations with poorly concealed yearning, her eyes bright. Very well, I heard myself say. One evening, but we leave at first light. That evening. The village green was strung with paper lanterns that glowed like captured stars. A small orchestra played fiddle, accordion, guitar, and people danced country reels with enthusiastic if not entirely graceful abandon. We stood at the edges, not quite part of the festivities but present nonetheless. Myra had purchased us all cider, and we sipped it slowly, watching the celebration unfold. A young man approached Sira, perhaps 20, farm-strong, with an honest face and nervous smile. Miss, would you do me the honor of a dance? She glanced at me, I nodded, what else could I do, and watched her be led onto the dance floor. She was not an excellent dancer. Her formal training had been for courtly dances, not country reels, but she laughed as she learned the steps, bright and free, and every man in the vicinity noticed. My hands clenched around my cider mug. You are growling again, Declan murmured, audibly. I am not. You absolutely are. Half the village can hear you. The dogs have started hiding. Another man cut in, then another, each one smiling at her, charmed by her laughter, her beauty, her spirit. My wolf was snarling, mine, ours, make them stop touching her. Either claim her or let her go, Declan said quietly. This half measure is torture for you both. I cannot. Why not? Because everyone I have ever cared for has died, because I do not know how to be anything other than alone, because she deserves better than a broken werewolf who will likely get her killed. Have you asked what she wants? Before I could answer, yet another man approached Sira, this one too familiar, his hand lingering at her waist, leaning too close as he spoke. Something in her posture changed, stiffened, uncomfortable. I was moving before conscious thought formed. She is with me. The man looked up, saw whatever expression was on my face, and stepped back smartly. I meant no offense, sir. Then cease touching her. I pulled Sira against my side, proprietary, unmistakable. Karen, she said, breathless, what are you? Dance with me. I do not think this music is suited to formal. I do not care about the music. The current reel ended. The musicians began something slower, a waltz, incongruous among the country dances but welcome nonetheless. I pulled Sira into my arms, her hand in mine, my other hand at her waist, too close for propriety. I did not care. We moved together, not quite dancing, not quite standing still, swaying to the music while the world continued around us. You were jealous, she said, wonder in her voice. I was concerned for your safety. You were jealous. That is, Sira. Say it, say you were jealous. I looked down at her, at those green eyes that saw entirely too much. I was jealous, I admitted roughly. Every man here wants you, I can smell it, and I cut myself off. What do you want? You everything forever, I couldn't say it. This is not the time for such conversations, I replied. Then when? Kieran, Myra's voice urgent, cut through the music and laughter. She stood at the edge of the green, her expression tight, riders coming fast from the south road. I could hear them now, horses, many horses, moving with military precision. The king's men. We must go now.
Chapter 10. We fled into the darkness, leaving the music and laughter behind. 4 of us now, running through unfamiliar country, pursued by men who would not rest until we were captured. My new dress was already torn from branches. My carefully braided hair came loose, whipping across my face. My feet, still not fully healed despite Myra's care, screamed with every step. But I pressed on, because what choice remained? Kieran stayed beside me, matching his pace to mine even when I knew he could run faster. Myra and Declan ranged ahead and behind, wolves now, their superior senses tracking our pursuers. How close? Kieran asked when we paused briefly for me to catch my breath. Myra shifted back to human form. Perhaps 2 miles behind, they are tracking us somehow, too accurately for mere chance. My dress, I realized with sinking certainty. The one I wore from the palace, I left it in the cabin where we sheltered. They must have found it, used hounds to catch my scent. Then we must find water, Declan said, also shifting back. Break the scent trail. We ran again, my lungs burned, my legs trembled. Still I pressed on. After perhaps 2 hours, Kieran called a halt. I collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath. My vision swam. When had the world started tilting? Sira, Kieran's voice seemed to come from very far away. Sira, look at me. I tried, the world spun. Myra's hand touched my forehead. She is burning with fever. I am perfectly well, I protested, though in truth I felt anything but well. Your feet are infected again. The constant travel has prevented proper healing. Myra's voice was gentle but firm. We must stop, properly stop for at least a day. We do not have a day, Kieran said, his voice tight. Then you shall watch her die of blood poisoning, Myra snapped. Your choice. The silence that followed was terrible. Then Kieran, there are caves, perhaps an hour northeast, deep enough to hide us, defensible if we are found. Can she make it that far? If you carry her, perhaps. I felt myself being lifted. Kieran's arms, strong and sure, cradling me against his chest. Stay with me, he murmured. Just a little longer, Sira, stay with me. I tried, truly I did. I remember little of the journey there. Fever had taken hold fully, and the world became fragments. Kieran's arms carrying me, never faltering despite the difficult terrain. The cool darkness of stone as we entered the caves. Voices, worried, discussing treatments and infection and whether I would survive the night. Then pain as Myra cleaned and treated my feet properly, cutting away infected flesh. I may have screamed, I am not certain. Hold her still, Myra's voice commanding. I must get all of it or the infection will spread. You are hurting her. I am saving her life. Now hold her still or leave if you cannot bear it. More pain, then bless numbness as Myra gave me something. Willow bark tea, perhaps, or something stronger. The world went dark. I dreamed of the execution again, the one I had witnessed when I was 15. But this time, it was different. This time, it was Kieran in chains. Kieran being beaten, tortured, while the crowd jeered and my father watched with cold satisfaction. I tried to scream, to run to him, to do something. But I was frozen, unable to move, unable to help. I watched him die, while I stood useless and broken and... Sira, Sira, wake up. You are safe, I am here. His voice, rough and worried, pulled me back toward consciousness. But the fever dragged me down again before I could respond. More dreams, more nightmares. Helena being dragged away by soldiers because she had helped me escape. Cordelia, locked in the tower I was meant to occupy, screaming my name. Everyone I loved, suffering because of my choices. No, I tried to say. No, please. SHH, it is only fever. None of it is real. Kieran's voice again. Kieran's hand, cool against my burning forehead. I clung to that touch, let it anchor me against the nightmares. Time lost meaning, hours or days passed, the fever raged. The fever should have broken by now, Myra's voice, tight with worry. 3 days and still it burns. I do not understand, the infection is gone, the wounds are clean, but still she burns. What else can we do? Kieran's voice, desperate in a way I had never heard before. Wait, pray, hope her body is strong enough to fight whatever poison still lingers. A pause, then so quietly I almost missed it. She is strong enough. She is the strongest person I have ever known. I wanted to respond, wanted to tell him I was fighting, I was trying. But the darkness pulled me down again. When I woke next, cool water was being dripped between my lips. Careful hands adjusted blankets around me. That is it, Myra's voice, encouraging. Drink, your body needs water to flush the last of the poison. I managed to swallow, then again. The water was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. Kieran, my voice was barely a whisper. Here, his face appeared above me, haggard with exhaustion and relief. I am here. How long? 4 days. The fever broke this morning. You have been drifting in and out of consciousness since. 4 days, we had lost 4 days. The hunters have passed us by, they believe we continued north. We are safe, for now. I tried to sit up, the world spun alarmingly. Kieran was beside me immediately, supporting me with a hand at my back. Slowly, you have been abed for days. Your body needs time to adjust. I am sorry, I said, my voice hoarse from disuse. I have been nothing but a burden, slowing you down, requiring rescue, now this. Stop. But. Sera, look at me. I did. His eyes were fierce, determined, filled with something I dared not name. You are not a burden, you are. He seemed to struggle for words. You are the bravest person I have ever known. I have been terrified every moment of every day. Bravery is not absence of fear. It is action despite fear. His hand cupped my cheek, rough calluses gentle against my skin. You are extraordinary, do you understand? I could not speak, could only stare at him, at the raw honesty in his expression. Then he kissed me. It was not gentle like the last time, not tentative. It was desperate and claiming and full of weeks of restrained wanting finally unleashed. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer despite my weakness. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I should not have, he began. If you apologize, I shall strike you, or try to. I am still quite weak, so the threat may lack force. Despite everything, he smiled. Violent woman. Only when provoked. I pulled him down for another kiss. You have been provoking me since the dungeon. This kiss was slower, thorough, a claiming that went both ways. When we parted again, Declan's voice echoed from deeper in the cave. Finally, Myra, they have sorted themselves out. You owe me 5 shillings. I felt my face flush hot. Kieran pressed his forehead against mine. We have an audience. Apparently. This complicates matters. Does it, or does it simplify them? He pulled back to look at me properly. Sera, I can offer you nothing but danger and uncertainty. You offer me freedom, choice, the possibility of living rather than merely surviving. I held his gaze. That is rather more than my father ever offered. You could still return, make peace, find safety. With Dorian, the man who assaulted me and promised to lock me in a tower, I shook my head. No, I would rather die free than live in that cage. The life I lead is. Step, I still choose you. I cupped his face. Unless you do not want me. If that is the case, say so plainly, and I shall cease throwing myself at you in this mortifying fashion. Not want you, he laughed, the sound incredulous. Sera, I have wanted you since the moment you walked into that dungeon cell. I kissed him softly. Let me decide what risks I am willing to take. He looked at me for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, resignation, perhaps, or acceptance. Very well, but there are things you must understand. About us, about mating bonds, about what this could mean if we. Tell me later, for now, simply. I pulled him closer into the bedroll beside me. Stay. He did. We lay together, carefully chaste given my weakened state and the presence of Myra and Declan elsewhere in the caves, but together nonetheless. His arms around me, my head on his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my ear. I love you, I said softly. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they felt like coming home. He went very still, then his arms tightened around me. I love you too. Simple words, profound truth. I smiled against his chest. Was that so difficult to admit? Terrifying, actually. Good, I would hate to be the only one terrified. He kissed my hair, held me closer.
Chapter 11. We remained in the caves for 7 days total. Myra insisted Sera needed proper recovery time, and for once I did not argue. The infection cleared, strength returned gradually. Color came back to Sera's cheeks, and the terrible fragility that had frightened me so deeply faded day by day. And with each day the thing between us, this connection, this bond, grew stronger, more undeniable. I had thought admitting love would be the difficult part. I had been wrong. Admitting love was simple compared to navigating what came after. You need to learn to defend yourself properly, I told her on the 5th day, when she was strong enough to stand without swaying. Not merely court techniques, but true combat. We practiced in the largest cave chamber. Declan and Myra gave us space, pretending to busy themselves with other tasks while watching with poorly concealed interest. Your stance is too upright, I said, moving behind her to adjust her position. Lower, you wish to be stable, difficult to unbalance. My hands settled on her hips, adjusting her stance. She went very still. Like this, I murmured, demonstrating the proper form. My chest pressed against her back, my breath stirred her hair. This was supposed to be instructional. It felt like something else entirely. Now if someone attacks from behind, I wrapped my arms around her, demonstrating a hold. What do you do? Her voice was breathless. I cannot recall. Sera, focus. I am trying. You are making it rather difficult. I was making it difficult for myself as well. Every point where we touched felt charged, electric. My wolf paced beneath my skin, wanting more, wanting to claim her fully. Not yet, I told it firmly. She is still recovering. We must be patient. The elbow, I prompted, to the solar plexus. She drove her elbow back gently, since this was practice. It connected with my ribs with satisfying precision. Good again. We drilled the movement repeatedly, each repetition an exquisite torture of controlled contact. Finally, I released her, stepping back before I did something foolish. Enough for today. Kieran, we should rest. You are still recovering. I left before she could protest, before I could give in to the urge to pull her close and never let go. I found Declan on watch near the cave entrance, where the cool night air slipped in from the forest beyond. Firelight caught the edge of his grin as I approached. You are aware of the bond, right? He said. I went very still. What? He studied me for a moment, then shook his head. You truly haven't noticed, the way you always know where she is, how her emotions bleed into yours, how you feel it when she's afraid or hurting. That's impossible, I said sharply. Mating bonds require. Require what? Declan cut in. A ceremony, a declaration, he scoffed softly. No, Kieran, they require recognition, choice, and you've already made yours, both of you have, whether you're ready to admit it or not. I wanted to argue, but the truth settled heavy in my chest. I did always know where she was, could feel her presence even when she was deep within the caves. I had woken from sleep the night her fever peaked, heart racing, driven by a certainty I couldn't explain. She had needed me, and I had known. The bond hadn't come with fanfare or intent. It had formed quietly, thread by thread, woven from proximity, from care freely given, from a love that had slipped in before I'd realized I was unguarded. And now it was there. Despite the gravity of the conversation, Declan smiled. Love rarely asks permission. It simply arrives and demands we adapt, don't fight it. Helpful. I try, he clapped a hand on my shoulder, then stood and stretched. I'm going to sleep. Try not to brood all night. It gives you frown lines. I made my way back to Sierra's bedroll. She was awake, watching me in the dim glow of the banked fire. I can't sleep either, she said softly. Sierra, come here. It wasn't a request. I should have refused, should have kept my distance, should have been sensible. I was tired of being sensible. I lay beside her and she curled into me at once, fitting against my body as though she'd always belonged there. I've been thinking, she murmured, about what you said about bonds. Zero. Hush, let me finish. She tilted her head to look at me. Myra explained it to me, how werewolves mate for life, how the bond is permanent, unbreakable. Her voice didn't waver. I know you have doubts because I'm human, but my feelings aren't temporary. I want forever, too. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the determination in her eyes, the set of her jaw, the certainty she wore without fear. She knew what she was choosing. And she chose it anyway. Very well, I said quietly, but on one condition. Then I kissed her, and the last of my resistance gave way. The kiss deepened, slow and sure. My hands threaded into her hair, hers tightened in my shirt. Sierra, I breathed, if we do this, if we cross this line, there's no turning back. The bond will complete. You will be mine, and I will be yours for whatever time we're given. Good, she pulled back just enough to meet my gaze, fierce and unflinching. I don't want to turn back, I want this, I want you. You've never, I stopped myself, I don't want to hurt you. Then don't, her voice softened, but her resolve didn't. Just don't leave me. She kissed me again, gentler this time. I trust you completely. Those words nearly undid me. I kissed her again, then again, memorizing the taste of her, the feel of her in my arms. My hands moved to the laces of her dress, fumbling slightly in my eagerness. She helped, laughing softly at my impatience. I am usually more coordinated than this, I muttered. I shall not judge you for nervousness. I am quite nervous myself. When the dress finally fell away, I pulled back to look at her properly. She lay before me in only her chemise, her dark hair spread across the bedroll, her eyes bright with want and trust and love. You are beautiful, I said, my voice rough. So are you. I removed my own clothing more efficiently, then returned to her, covering her body with mine. She gasped at the contact, skin against skin, heat against heat. Her hands explored my back, my shoulders, learning the topography of scars and muscle. Tell me if you wish me to stop, I said. I shall not. I kissed her slowly, thoroughly, while my hands mapped her body, the curve of her waist, the swell of her breasts, the soft skin of her thighs. I wanted to memorize every inch of her, wanted to know her so completely that even when she was gone, I would carry the memory of this perfection. When I finally settled between her legs, she was trembling, not with fear but with anticipation. This will hurt, I warned. At first, I shall try to be gentle, but... I know, she cupped my face. I am not afraid. I entered her slowly, carefully, watching her face for signs of pain. She tensed, gasped, her nails digging into my shoulders. All right, I asked, holding very still despite every instinct screaming to move. Yes, give me a moment. I waited, pressing soft kisses to her face, her neck, her shoulders, until I felt her relax beneath me. Better. Better, you can move now. I did slowly at first, letting her adjust to the sensation. She made small sounds of discovery, of pleasure, that drove me nearly mad with want. More, she breathed, please, Kieran, more. I increased my pace, deeper, harder, chasing the pleasure building between us. She met me thrust for thrust, her body learning the rhythm quickly, her cries growing louder until I had to cover her mouth with mine to muffle the sounds lest we alert Myra and Declan to exactly what we were doing. When release came, it was mutual, overwhelming, transformative. And I felt it, the mating bond snapping into place, solid and permanent and right. A golden thread connecting my soul to hers, unbreakable and eternal. Mine forever, mine. We lay tangled together, her head on my chest, my arms around her, both of us still trembling with aftershocks. That was, she began. Yes, I did not know it could be like that. Neither did I kissed her hair. She smiled against my chest. Good, I would hate to be the only one completely overwhelmed. I held her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit against me, how right this felt. For the first time in 18 years, I allowed myself to hope for more than mere survival. For the first time since I lost my pack, I allowed myself to belong to someone. I love you, she said again, as though the words were too precious to say only once. I love you too. We drifted to sleep like that, wrapped around each other, the mating bond humming between us like a song only we could hear. When I woke in the morning, she was still there, still safe, still mine. It felt like a miracle.
Chapter 12. We had been traveling together for nearly 2 months when the others began to appear. First, a lone wolf named Ash, female, scarred from shoulder to hip, watching us from the tree line for 3 days before Myra finally approached and invited her to share our fire. I have nowhere else to go, Ash said simply. My pack was slaughtered. Hunters, I am the only one who escaped. The pain in her voice was familiar. We all carried it now, the weight of loss, the guilt of survival. You may travel with us, Kieran said, if you wish. She did. Then 2 brothers appeared, Thomas and William, barely more than boys, who had lost their pack to hunters the previous winter and had been wandering alone ever since. We heard there was a wolf who escaped the king's dungeons, Thomas said shyly. We hoped, maybe you would not turn us away. You are welcome, I said before Kieran could respond. We have food and shelter. You need not be alone anymore. Kieran looked at me, something complicated in his expression, but he did not contradict me. Then more came, always more. A woman named Cassandra, who had been imprisoned for months and escaped when her captors grew careless. 2 sisters, Alara and Faye, who had lost their mother to illness and their father to despair. Word had spread, it seemed, of Kieran, the alpha who escaped the king's dungeons, who traveled with a human mate, who did not turn away those seeking sanctuary. By the time autumn began to turn toward winter, we numbered 17, 12 wolves, myself, and 4 humans who had attached themselves to our group seeking protection from various threats. Kieran was visibly uncomfortable with the growing numbers. I do not lead a pack, he said one evening, watching them all settle around the fire. Yet you have one forming regardless, Declan pointed out. They look to you for guidance, for protection. Whether you claim the title or not, you are their alpha. I did not want this. Want rarely enters into it, Myra said gently. You are what they need, so you become what they need. We cannot continue wandering, Myra said a week later. Not with this many, we require a base, somewhere defensible that we can call home, at least for the winter. Kieran looked deeply uncomfortable with the very notion. I do not. We know, you do not lead packs. You do not want responsibility, you prefer solitude. I took his hand. But 17 people are following you anyway. We can either acknowledge reality and plan accordingly, or we can continue pretending we are simply travelers and watch people freeze when winter truly arrives. He looked at me with exasperated fondness. You're becoming alarmingly blunt. Helena's influence and necessity. I squeezed his hand. There is a place, an old estate that once belonged to a distant cousin of my mother S. He died without heirs 5 years ago, and it stood empty ever since. I remember it from childhood visits. The fire crackled, no one spoke. I don't know exactly how far we are from it, I admitted, but it's near Pavilon in Canary. Every pair of eyes turned to me. It's isolated, I continued. Defensible, it has its own water source and extensive grounds, we could. I know Pavilon, Myra said quietly. It's 3 days north of here. She lifted her gaze, something hopeful flickering there. We could make a home there. Kieran looked at me, something unreadable in his expression. For how long? He asked. For as long as we need it. The estate was more decrepit than I remembered, windows shattered, the roof sagging in places, the gardens swallowed by years of neglect. But the bones were sound. The stone walls still stood firm. The land itself felt willing. The journey there had taken 4 hard days. We moved carefully, avoiding main roads, traveling at dawn and dusk. The wolves scouted ahead while the rest of us followed winding forest paths and half-forgotten tracks. There were moments when I doubted my own memory, when the land looked wrong, unfamiliar. But then a rise in the terrain, a bend in the river, and I knew. The place was close. I had been here before, barefoot and laughing, long before my life had narrowed to corridors and crowns. When the estate finally emerged from the trees, relief washed through the group like a held breath released. The main house was large enough to shelter us all, with room to spare. The outbuildings could be converted into additional housing. The grounds offered space for gardens, for training, for the simple luxury of open sky. "It will require considerable work," Declan said, surveying the damage with a critical eye. "Then we work," Ash replied simply. "I am not afraid of labor." And we did. For 3 weeks, we repaired and cleaned and transformed the abandoned estate into something that resembled a home. The wolves brought game. The humans tended gardens and managed supplies. Everyone contributed according to their strengths. Cassandra, it turned out, had been a carpenter before her imprisonment. She took charge of the roof repairs with quiet authority. Reed had once been a cook. He claimed the kitchen and soon produced meals far more refined than anything we'd eaten in the caves. The sisters, Alara and Faye, established a small infirmary, giving Myra a space where she no longer had to improvise with stone walls and firelight. I found myself managing the household, organizing work details, mediating disputes, ensuring resources were shared fairly. It wasn't unlike overseeing palace staff, except these people stayed because they wanted to. It felt right, purpose, where before there had only been flight. I was in the kitchen garden one afternoon, helping Faye plant winter vegetables, when a voice I knew better than my own breath cut through the air. "Seraphina Valcourt, you have caused me considerable worry." I spun so fast, I nearly lost my footing. "Helena." She stood just beyond the gate, travel-worn but unbowed, a single bag slung over her shoulder. Her hair was streaked with gray she hadn't had when I last saw her, her boots caked with road dust, but her eyes were the same. Sharp, loving, unyielding. I ran to her, propriety forgot, and threw my arms around her. "How did you find me?" I demanded breathlessly. Are you hurt? Did anyone follow you?" "Peace, child, one question at a time." She held me at arm's length, studying me with familiar scrutiny. "You look well, thin, yes, but alive, happy, even." "I am," I said fiercely. "Helena, I truly am." "Good," her expression softened. "Then the search was worth it." "The search?" "I went everywhere you might have gone," she said simply. "Every estate your mother ever mentioned, every place you spoke of as a girl. I followed rumors, caravan gossip, the quiet talk of villagers who'd seen wolves guarding humans instead of hunting them." Her mouth curved wryly. "You were never very subtle." Emotion clogged my throat. "You could have been killed." "So could you." She glanced past me, taking in the estate, the movement of people working together, the quiet order of it all. "And yet here you are." "I didn't mean to disappear," I whispered. "I know," she squeezed my hands. "But next time you flee the realm, perhaps leave a note." I laughed, wet and breathless. "Come," I said, turning her toward the house. "Let me introduce you to everyone. You'll want to see what we're building." And Helena Valcourt, who had raised me, scolded me, loved me into womanhood, walked through the gates as though she had always been meant to find me there. Helena integrated herself into our household with remarkable ease. Within a week, she had reorganized the kitchens to be more efficient, established a proper infirmary for Myra's healing work, and taught 3 of the younger wolves to read. She and Kieran eyed each other warily at first. "You are the man who escaped," she said at their first proper meeting. "I am." "You are treating Seraphina well." "I am trying too." "See that you continue to do so. I did not raise her for 21 years merely to watch her be mistreated by anyone. Despite himself, Kieran smiled, understood. After that, they developed a mutual respect born of shared devotion to my well-being. Helena seemed utterly unbothered by living among werewolves. She treated them all with the same brisk kindness she had always shown palace servants, fair, firm, and utterly unafraid. "They are people," she said when I commented on her ease. "People with unusual abilities, yes, but people nonetheless. I did not raise you to fear what is different, child. I raised you better than that." A week after her arrival, Helena asked to speak with me privately. We sat in my room, the room I shared with Kieran, though he was tactfully absent, giving us space. "There is something I must tell you," Helena said, her hands folded in her lap. "Something your mother made me swear to keep secret until you were safe, until you were far from your father's reach." My heart began to pound. About mother. "Yes," Helena took a breath. "Your mother, Alina, was not fully human. Her father was werewolf, her mother human. She could not shift, the ability had skipped her generation, but she carried the blood nonetheless." The words seemed to come from very far away. "Mother was werewolf-born." Helena nodded once. "Yes, she hid it all her life. She was terrified of exactly what eventually happened." Her hands tightened in her lap. "She met your father when she was young and fell deeply in love. By the time she realized what he truly believed about supernatural beings, she was already married, already carrying you." "Did he know?" My voice barely worked. "Not when he married her. She told him later. She believed love would be enough." Helena's expression tightened with old grief. "It was not. I don't know what passed between them after that, but after you were born, he became distant, cold." "And when she died," my breath hitched. "How did she die? Father has never spoken of it, not once." Helena inhaled slowly. "She was murdered." The words landed like a blow. "By extremists," Helena continued, her voice hardening. "A faction of werewolves who believed bloodlines must remain pure, that those who chose human mates were traitors. They killed her when you were 3, made it look like a random attack to hide their involvement." My hands curled into fists. "Your father," Helena hesitated. "Something in him broke that day. He blamed all werewolves for what a few fanatics had done. And you," her gaze softened painfully. "I think he cannot look at you without seeing her, without remembering both his love and his hatred." She reached across the table and took my hands. "But Sera, listen to me. This means you carry werewolf blood." The room went very quiet. I sat there, stunned, as my entire understanding of myself shifted. I was not wholly human, had never been. My mother had been murdered for her bloodline. My father had spent 20 years punishing me for inheriting it. And somewhere, deep in my blood, a wolf waited. I told Kieran that night. He listened without interrupting, his face unreadable but his hands steady on mine. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "That explains a great deal." "What does?" I asked. "The way the bond found you so easily." His thumb brushed my knuckles, reverent. "Why it never rejected you, why your presence feels familiar." He met my eyes. Tears burned behind my eyes. "Does it change anything?" "No," his answer was immediate. "If anything, it makes the truth clearer." He leaned his forehead against mine. "You are exactly who you were meant to be." When Myra heard, she only smiled faintly. "I told you," she said to Declan. "I smelled it. There is wolf in her but distant, deluded, sleeping." Declan snorted. He didn't like to be wrong. A month after Helena's arrival, Cordelia came. She appeared at the estate gates in a hired coach, hauling an absurd amount of luggage and wearing a determinedly cheerful expression that did not quite hide her nerves. She and Helena, it turned out, had been quietly searching in tandem, following rumors, letters, and instinct. "Sera," Cordelia cried the moment she spotted me. "Thank heavens I found you. I was not about to let you vanish into the wilderness without supervision. Your survival instincts are questionable at best." She stopped short when she saw Kieran. Stared. "Once, twice." "Oh," she said faintly, "you are not languishing alone." Kieran raised a brow. You are, Cordelia continued, regaining herself, very clearly thriving, with a very handsome werewolf. She stepped forward and extended a hand. Hello, I'm Cordelia Ashmore, Sierra's dearest friend, and the person she absolutely should have told about the magnificent shoulders. Kieran blinked. Then, to my surprise, he smiled. I've been told they're quite impressive. Cordelia beamed. Oh, I like him. I covered my face with my hands. Cordelia, please stop talking. I am merely making observations. Kieran looked bemused. Kieran Ashwood, a pleasure to make your acquaintance. The pleasure is mine, I assure you. Helena wrote me letters, very circumspect letters, I might add, but she failed to mention certain physical attributes. Cordelia smiled brightly. I shall have words with her about that later. Declan appeared from the direction of the training yard, saw Cordelia, and stopped dead. Who, he said slowly, is that? My friend Cordelia. Cordelia, this is Declan. They stared at one another for a long moment. I recognized the look on both their faces. I had seen it in a mirror often enough when looking at Kieran. Pleasure to make your acquaintance, Declan finally managed. Likewise, I am certain, Cordelia replied, her cheeks distinctly pink. I exchanged glances with Myra, who smiled knowingly. Oh dear, Myra murmured, this should be entertaining. It was. By winter's true arrival, we numbered 27. Not all wolves, some humans had found their way to us, seeking sanctuary from various threats, but all choosing to stay, to contribute, to become part of something larger than themselves. Kieran struggled with the designation of alpha. He had never wanted to lead, had spent 18 years alone specifically to avoid such responsibility. But leadership found him regardless. The wolves looked to him for guidance, deferred to his judgment, sought his approval. And slowly, reluctantly, he began to accept it. I watched him grow into the role, still uncomfortable, still protesting he was not suited for it, but leading nonetheless. Settling disputes with fairness, protecting the vulnerable with fierce determination, building something that felt, for the first time in all our lives, like home. One evening, I found him on the estate's roof, watching the moon rise. You are brooding again, I observed, settling beside him. I am thinking. About how I intended to live and die alone, about how I specifically avoided this. He gestured vaguely at the estate below, where wolves and humans moved about evening tasks. And yet here I am, alpha of a pack I never wanted, responsible for lives I never asked to protect. Do you regret it? He was quiet for a moment. Then, no, that is what disturbs me. I should regret it. I should be terrified. Kieran, I took his hand. You cannot protect everyone from everything. Loss is inevitable. But so is love, if you permit it. So is joy. So is the simple pleasure of belonging to something larger than yourself. He pulled me close, pressed his face into my hair. When did you become so wise? Helena's influence, I suspect. She has been giving me lectures about accepting what is rather than mourning what cannot be. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the pack, our pack, settle in for the evening. Wolves and humans working together, living together, building something that defied everything the kingdom believed about supernatural beings. This was home, imperfect, precarious, but ours.
13. It arrived via messenger, a young man who approached the estate nervously, clearly aware he was entering werewolf territory. Message for Kieran Ashwood, he said, handing over the sealed letter, from Prince Adrian Valcourt. The seal bore Adrian's personal crest, not the king's but the prince's own mark. I opened it warily. Kieran Ashwood. I am Prince Adrian Valcourt, brother to Seraphina. We have not met, though I feel I know you through her letters. I write to warn you my father comes. He has finally located your sanctuary and musters forces as I write this. 20 men, hunters specifically trained in werewolf slaying. They depart within 3 days. I cannot stop him, I have tried. He will not listen to reason, will not be dissuaded. He is convinced that Seraphina has been corrupted, stolen, held against her will. No argument penetrates his certainty. I include with this letter a royal decree granting your estate protected status under Crown law. It will not stop him. He is beyond caring for legalities now, but it may slow him, may give you time to prepare. Protect her, that is all I ask. Whatever the cost, keep my sister safe. I shall come when I can. There are matters I must attend to here first, preparations I must make, but I will come. Adrian Valcourt. 20 hunters, men who knew how to kill werewolves specifically. Against our 27, many of whom had never fought, many of whom were barely trained. What is it? Sira asked, appearing at my side. I handed her the letter. I gathered the pack that evening, all 27 assembled in the main hall. We have a problem, I said without preamble. The former king comes, 20 hunters trained specifically in werewolf slaying. They will be here within the week. Silence, then murmuring, fear and anger warring with determination. We should flee, Ash said immediately. Scatter, make ourselves difficult targets. No, the word came from Declan. We stand together, this is our home, we defend it. Arguments erupted, fear and bravado warring with pragmatism and courage. I let them argue for several minutes, then... Enough. Silence fell. Those who wish to leave may do so. I will not force anyone to fight. I will not judge anyone for choosing safety over battle. I looked around at the assembled pack, but I am staying. I will not abandon it without battle. Nor shall I, Myra said quietly. I stand with my alpha, Declan added. One by one they all affirmed, even the humans, even those who had no combat training, who had never raised a weapon in their lives. We had 2 days, perhaps slightly more if fortune favored us. It would have to be enough. I pushed them hard, harder than was comfortable. We drilled combat formations, practiced coordinated attacks, learned to fight as a unit rather than individuals. The wolves who could fight taught those who could not. Ash, scarred and fierce, proved to be an excellent instructor. Reed, the cook, turned out to have military training from his youth and organized our defenses with tactical precision. Sira trained alongside them, despite my protests. I can fight, she said firmly. You have taught me, Declan has taught me. I will not cower in the house while others defend our home. You could be killed. So could you, so could any of us. She gripped my hand. We face this together, that is what pack means. I wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the safest room and guard the door myself. But she was right, this was what pack meant, standing together, fighting together, trusting each other to do what needed doing. The hunters would arrive with dawn. We had done all we could to prepare. That night I gathered the pack one final time. Tomorrow we fight, some of us may die, that is the nature of battle. I looked at each of them. But we fight for something worth dying for home, for family, for the right to exist without persecution, for the dream that humans and werewolves can live together in peace. For pack, someone called out. The cry was taken up, for pack, for pack. It echoed through the hall, fierce and determined. Later in our room, Sira was quiet. What troubles you? I asked, though I knew. I am afraid, not for myself, for you, for all of them. She turned to face me. My father he is relentless, Kieran. He does not forgive, he does not forget, and he is very skilled at destroying what he cannot control. Then we shall have to be more skilled at surviving. I am serious. As am I pulled her close. We have something he does not. We have chosen this, chosen each other, chosen to stand together. That gives us strength he cannot match. She pressed her face against my chest. I love you. If tomorrow, if something happens, I needed you to know that. I love you more than I thought possible to love anyone. I know I love you too. Have loved you since you walked into that dungeon with lockpicks and impossible determination. We made love that night with desperate tenderness, knowing it might be our last night together. Afterward, we lay tangled in each other's arms, neither wanting to sleep, neither wanting to waste precious hours. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. If something happens to me tomorrow, if I fall, promise you will not blame yourself. Promise you will keep living, keep protecting them, keep being the alpha they need. Zero. Promise me. I wanted to refuse, wanted to tell her that if she died, I would follow her into death without hesitation. But she deserved better than that. The pack deserved better. I promise if you promise the same. She smiled against my chest. I promise. We drifted to sleep finally, wrapped around each other, hearts beating in sync, the mating bond humming between us like a golden thread. Tomorrow would bring battle, blood, perhaps death. But tonight we had this. It would have to be enough.
Chapter 14. They came with the sunrise. 20 men, as Adrian had warned, armed with silver bullets, silver blades, crossbows designed specifically for bringing down large predators. My father led them. I could see him even from our position within the estate, still regal despite his abdication, still coldly certain of his righteousness, still the man who had haunted my nightmares and shaped my captivity. Seraphina, his voice carried across the grounds. I know you are within. I have come to bring you home. Beside me, Kieran growled low in his throat. I stepped forward before he could stop me, standing visible in the estate's main doorway. I am home, father. Even at this distance, I could see his face twist with rage and disbelief. You are corrupted, stolen by beasts. I shall rescue you, daughter, whether you wish it or not. I am not your daughter anymore. I am Luna of this pack, and you are not welcome here. The words felt powerful. True, I was not the princess he had tried to shape into a political pawn. I was something else now, something I had chosen to become. You leave me no choice, father said, his voice carrying cold finality. He raised his hand. The hunters advanced. Our wolves met them at the estate's outer wall, a coordinated defense just as we had practiced. Ash led the first wave, her scarred body moving with lethal grace. She took down 2 hunters before they even knew what hit them. Thomas and William fought together, covering each other's blind spots with the perfect synchronization of siblings. Myra fought with surgical precision, targeting vulnerable points, moving like water around attacks. Declan coordinated the defense from the wall, calling out positions and threats with tactical efficiency. And Kieran was magnificent and terrifying, a true alpha defending his pack with savage determination. He moved through the battle like death incarnate, protecting the vulnerable, rallying the frightened, leading by example. I fought with the bow Declan had given me, taking position on the estate's second floor where I had clear sightlines. My arrows were not silver-tipped. We could not afford such luxury, but I aimed for eyes, throats, vulnerable points. My first shot took a hunter in the shoulder. He fell, screaming. My second caught one in the thigh. He went down. I was not an excellent archer, but I was adequate, and adequate was enough. The tide turns. For the first hour, we held them. Our wolves were faster, stronger, more motivated. We were defending home while they were attacking strangers. But they had silver, and training, and the cold certainty of men who believed they were righteous in their slaughter. Reed fell first, a silver bullet to the chest. He died instantly. Then Faye, one of the sisters, a crossbow bolt through the throat. Then Cassandra, the carpenter who had repaired our roof, dragged down by 3 hunters and torn apart. I watched them fall and felt something break inside me. These were my people, my pack, and they were dying to protect me from my own father. A hunter made it past our defenses, breached the house, found the stairs. Found me. I saw him too late, was drawing another arrow when he charged. The silver blade caught me across the ribs, not deep, but burning with the touch of silver against skin that carried werewolf blood. I fell gasping, the bow clattering from my hands. Kieran's howl of rage echoed across the battlefield. I had never heard anything like it. Pure fury, pure terror, the sound of a mate whose bond partner was injured. I watched through pain-blurred vision as Kieran tore through the remaining hunters between us with single-minded violence. He was no longer fighting tactically, no longer thinking. He was pure instinct, pure rage, pure protection. The hunter who had struck me lasted perhaps 3 seconds before Kieran's jaws closed around his throat. Then Kieran was beside me, shifting to human form, his hands gentle despite the blood covering them. How bad? His voice shook. Not deep, I shall survive. I gripped his hand. Go, they still fight, your pack needs you. Sera. Go. But the battle was not going well. We were losing ground. Then hoofbeats, fast approaching. My heart sank, father's reinforcements. But the rider who crested the hill bore a different standard, Adrian's personal colors. My brother astride a magnificent black horse, leading soldiers, royal soldiers, at least 30 of them. Stand down, Adrian's voice carried absolute authority. By order of the crown prince, by order of your king, this assault will cease immediately. My father turned, disbelief and rage warring on his face. Adrian, what is the meaning of? The meaning, father, is that your reign has ended. Adrian dismounted, unrolling a document. I have here a decree, signed by the majority of the council and endorsed by the church, declaring you unfit to rule. Your persistent abuse of power, your unauthorized wars against supernatural beings protected under the Treaty of Thornmoor, your tyrannical treatment of your own daughter, all of it documented, all of it witnessed. You dare. I dare, father. I dare because someone must. Because you have gone mad with grief and rage, and you are destroying everything in your path. The hunters hesitated, weapons half lowered, eyes darting between the two men who claimed their loyalty. Their former king commanded them to strike. Their current king commanded them to stand down. They chose the current king. She is my daughter, my father roared. These beasts have stolen her. I am no one's property, I said, my voice carrying farther than I thought possible. Helena's arm was firm around my waist as I stepped into the doorway, pain flaring through my ribs with every breath. I ignored it. Not yours, not anyone's, I continued. I chose this life. I chose Kieran. I chose freedom over the cage you would have locked me in. My father stared at me, as though I were a stranger wearing my face. Then his expression twisted, grief curdling into fury. Your mother would be ashamed of you, he spat, living among the very creatures who killed her. His hand tightened on his weapon. You deserve to die. Time fractured. I saw Kieran move, felt him move, lunging toward me, terror tearing through the bond. Too far. Too late. Steel flashed. Adrian stepped forward, swift and decisive, driving his blade into our father's chest before the shot could be loosed. The weapon slipped from my father's fingers. His eyes widened, not in rage now, but in shock. He fell. Silence crashed down around us. Adrian stood frozen for a heartbeat, blood on his hands, his face pale and resolute and utterly broken. I chose my sister, he said hoarsely. I chose the realm. My father lay still. And with him died the last claim he had ever held over my life.
Epilogue. The estate had grown almost beyond recognition. 53 wolves now called it home, along with the humans, Helena and Cordelia, Reed's widow who had arrived seeking the place where her husband died and stayed when she found belonging, and others who came quietly, carrying grief or hope in equal measure. The gardens flourished under careful tending, the outbuildings had been transformed into warm, livable spaces. The training yard rang daily with the sounds of movement and laughter, wolves practicing not only combat but restraint, cooperation, peace. We had built something remarkable. Not merely a sanctuary, but a community. Proof that humans and werewolves could coexist when fear no longer ruled the narrative. Adrian came once a month, slipping away from the crown whenever duty allowed. He had abolished the hunts, begun negotiations for a formal treaty with the supernatural realms, started the long, deliberate work of repairing what his father had broken. And Sera had become the heart of this place. The pack stabilized before we dared what came next. Bonds demanded respect, timing, choice freely reaffirmed. The ceremony was simple, it always should have been. Helena dressed her beneath the moon, hands steady despite the tears she tried and failed to hide. Cordelia hovered uselessly, offering opinions and affection in equal measure. Myra watched from a distance, solemn and approving. We met at the lake just beyond the tree line, where moonlight spilled like silver across still water. When Sarah stepped into view, my breath left me. She wore no crown, no silk, only pale fabric and the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly who she was. She chose me again. The bond sealed not with spectacle, but with recognition, with hands joined, with vows spoken softly, with the pack bearing witness as the moon crested high above us. Later, when the others had retreated and the night settled into hush, we remained by the water's edge. Moonlight painted her skin in silver. She touched my face as if confirming I was real. "You stayed," she murmured. "I always would have." She smiled at that, not the defiant smile she once wore to survive, but something softer, something whole. We waded into the lake together, the water cool and clear, reflecting the sky like a promise. There was no urgency between us now, no fear of loss or time stolen. Only closeness. Only belonging. I held her as the bond pulsed warm and steady between us, as if the world itself had exhaled and decided this, us, was right. For the first time in my long life, the future did not feel like a battlefield. It felt like home. And beneath the moonrise, with her heartbeat against mine, I knew. This was not an ending. It was a beginning.